Finance to forego penalties is certainly targeted at helping business houses. Now, if you're saying that maybe the compounded interest which has been accumulated, and maybe the government will not forego any of the principal from the collection of VAT or unpaid VAT by businesses, then I might be inclined to support you. But if we are going to, having given the Minister of Finance the discretion to allow him to make the discretion as to what waivers he's going to give, then I don't support the penalties at all. But I do support, I do believe that every cent collected from ordinary consumers need to be placed in the consolidated funds. I don't understand why businesses outside of a pandemic or outside of a recession will not be paying VAT that they've already collected from consumers. So I do take issue with that aspect of it. The other important thing I want to draw is that the Labour Party has done this kind of thing before. In a similar measure, Mr. President, I recall that they have actually allowed a hotel, the former Smugglers Hotel, I can call the name of the hotel. They've allowed that hotel to waive PAYE, pay as you earn. And that measure is just as bad as this measure, that if you are collecting taxes on behalf of the government, then what you've got to do is that you've got to make sure that you pay those taxes. Because these are taxes that you've deducted from employees' salaries. And why is it that a government would allow a company to keep taxes that they've already deducted from employees? And so it is the same kind of principle being applied, the same vein of argument that the Labour Party is applying to this measure by coming to ask for that discretion. And I do remember the accompanying explanation given to this policy prescription. Now, I hear the members, what's that? I hear the members are whispering under their breath, sandals. The sandals initiative is far different from you refusing to collect VAT that a company would have collected from ordinary consumers. It's far different from you, your government.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I stand on a point of order.
Sorry, Senator Shalry, what's your
Deputy
point of order?
President, I think the member is misleading the House. Based on the resolution before us, it says that the minister responsible for finance may by order alter the rate of interest. I'm not sure that it speaks to deferring or reducing the actual collection of the tax, but the interest, and I do not think that's what the member is referring to. So I'm not sure if he's me that's confused or if, but please clarify, although I think he's deliberately misleading the House.
Well, I don't think the member stated categorically that that this bill relates to waiving of the taxes. He was asking the question, and I don't think, therefore, that he has misled the House. Continue, please.
So altering the rate of interest, or the rate of interest or penalties, you want to call it, it's the same thing. So no, it's the same principle. You have got to say to those businesses, why didn't you pay your taxes that you have collected from ordinary consumers? So there's a principle attached to this. And that is the fundamental point that we're making here today. That the principle of an employer collecting PAYE, for example, and being given a free pass when those employees who felt that, hey, look, I've paid my taxes, only to find out that your employer did not pay the tax that he has shown on your payslip that he has deducted, but yet failed to remit the taxes that he has deducted on behalf of you to the Treasury and the Consolidated Fund. And so that's what we're saying, is that that is absolutely wrong. There is very little excuse for businesses who have not paid up those taxes on time, because those businesses had as well a markup. They had a profit margin which they would have leveled against consumers. And the tax portion of this, there is no excuse why they should not have paid it on time. So this is not for ordinary consumers. I mean, my colleague made the point very potently in the last debate presentation, in the last debate, that this is not for the have-nots. This is for the haves. And so we have got to send a very clear message to businesses when it comes to paying their taxes on time. So the waiver of the interest, how do I excuse, what is the rationale that a business can say that, look, we expect our workers to pay their taxes on time. We expect the ordinary citizens to pay those taxes on time. But when it comes to the collection of monies from ordinary consumers that we have levied under the premise that we're collecting it for the government, we haven't paid that. That has nothing to do with your cash flow. That has nothing to do with your company's operational expenses. It has everything to do with you, a business, doing the right thing. Now I want to get to sandals, because there are some big and fundamental differences here. Sandals was had a dispute matter with the Inland Revenue Department. And in that conflict, Sandals has reported that dispute, which was at $6 million in terms of the principal, and it had to do with withholding taxes that the company did not deduct from its foreign contractors. It's not that the company picked up the money and did not pay it to the government. They did not deduct it from foreign contractors and foreign trading partners that they have done business with. So for example, if you own a hotel, Senator, you have reservation companies, travel agencies overseas. You have people flying in to do elevator contracts and to do skill services that are not available on the island. What the Inland Revenue Department charged at the time was that Sandals was supposed to have deducted monies from those contractors. And Sandals said that the way that they have interpreted it did not interpret the same way. There was a conflict with the Inland Revenue Department in how their tax consultants, which are still advisors of this government, how they got advised by their tax consultant to deal with this specific matter. There were ongoing consultations between the then Dr. Kenny Anthony administration and Sandals as it pertains to the whole dispute that happened between Inland Revenue and Sandals. So it's a fundamentally different matter altogether. When our United Workers Party administration of 2016 to 2021 arrived, what we did was Sandals had a $200 million US dollar or a 500 million EC dollar investment on the table. And so as part of the incentives, we said, look, are we going to allow 6 million EC dollars? Because I know the Labour Party likes to erroneously state that it was $24 million. So here you are, waiving the penalties, but you want to hold us to the neck for $24 million against Sandals, which is not an accurate figure altogether, because the principal was never ever $24 million. And so if the Sandals matter had not been settled, it meant, therefore, that your government, by applying this policy here today, would have agreed to waive at least $18 million for Sandals. That's what this policy says, right? If you want to go there. So you have to be consistent in the positions that you take. You can't hold political positions when it comes to the finances and the development of this country. All we're saying to you is that, look, why is it that you're not picking up the VAT? Is it incompetence? Is it that you didn't harness the best potential that exists in the civil service? Is it that you didn't ensure that the revenue centers of the country were aggressive enough to pick up the taxes? What are the question marks? What can we learn going forward from the backlog of taxes, namely VAT in this instance, that we ought to learn so that we have better revenue collections, so that we can ensure that we have the better execution of our budgets? That's all we're saying. So my fundamental disagreement with this is the habit that we are creating to allow businesses to pay taxes in an untimely fashion. And that is my point, Mr. President. If the government says that, look, we are having difficulty, and having spoken to the businesses, it is now a challenge for them to pay it, then that's your explanation. But don't talk about sandals. Then you come to do this. It's every time this government has to take a tax measure, it's always right for you to give a stimulus, but it's not right when the UWP reduce the VAT rate from 12.5%, from 15 to 12.5, which is a 16% VAT rate. But you have come here today and you have given away VAT because there's a principle. At any given time, governments may analyze the economic situation, especially what we're going through now with an inflation crisis, at the time that we impose the reduction of VAT from 15.5 to 12.5, because we fundamentally believed that from 15 to 12. So you implemented it at 15, and we reduced it by 2.5 percentage points, 16% decline in the VAT rate. And so while we did that, we did so because we understood that the people of St. Lucia had a very onerous circumstance of this tax being placed on the back of them. Now, your own Prime Minister, while in opposition, said that VAT was oppressive to the poor. So it's very, very hard, Mr. President, to follow a very clear and consistent line of argument from the St. Lucia Labour Party when it comes to taxes and tax policy. And I want to remind them that while we reduce the VAT rate from 15 to 12.5%, that we also accompanied increases in taxes on the tourism sector. You would remember very well, we increased the departure tax from $25 US, and we also increased and added an airport development fee, right? And so therefore, we increased the taxes on tourists by 73%. But what we did was, ordinary consumers, people who were going to the supermarkets, people who had to buy LPG gas, people who had to buy various commodities, we thought that we needed to give those people a break. And our target, in fact, was on the tourists coming into the country. So we increased the airport, we imposed an airport development fee on tourists coming into the island. We also increased the departure taxes from $25 to by $38. And we also did another thing, is that we add, for the first time in this country, a head tax on tourists, so that tourists that are coming in would have paid a head tax to the St. Lucia Tourism Authority. It meant that if you were staying in one band of the tax rate, you were paying as much as $42. In another band of the tax, you were paying as much as $21 on a weekly vacation stay to St. Lucia. So we were raising revenues, over $100 million in revenue. But the Labour Party, what they like to speak of, Mr. President, is the fact that they said that year we were going to lose $55 million when it came to VAT. That never really happened, because the numbers in the revenue showed that when we decreased the tax, broad-based on all consumables, that what happened, we saw an increase in construction. So, and it's what we're saying here, an increase in the economy. And so what we're saying here, just by reducing a tax, or making, and you spoke about spending power today, by itself will not work. And so we ensured that we drove tourism arrivals to this country, open up new hotels that were closed, fast-track struggling projects under the SLP administration, injected more money into industries like construction so that people were working, people were paying taxes, people were spending. It all has to do with the understanding of the potential of a dollar. And I think that the Labour Party, the way that they measure economics is that if we give up this tax, we're losing $55 million. And I know, and in the next debate, I'll tell you what they were going to do with VAT. And I know that they are on the periphery, and they really would love to increase VAT to 15%. But it's all, for the Labour Party, it's not about being pragmatic. It's not about implementing policies that are going to work for the people of St. Lucia. It's about them proving that they are always right. And that is what they continue to do by the various positions that they continuously cling to. And so, Mr. President, I have some difficulty with this bill. I take issue with it. It shows inconsistency on the part of the Labour Party. Like everything else, it's piecemeal, it's disorganized, and it lacks direction. I want to thank you very much, Mr. President.
Senator Shallering.
Mr. Deputy President, thank you. Just a very short intervention, which may have been lengthened a bit just now. So for my part, this intervention is really nothing new in terms of interventions that have been placed before us, where it relates to whether it is VAT or other taxes that is collected by the Inland Revenue Department, and I wouldn't say the inability of the businesses to pay. I think in some cases it's just willful neglect of their responsibilities. And so there have been interventions before where waivers of interest and penalties have been given. I mean, I've not been on this planet for a very long time, but I know from the time I'm conscious of myself that it has been done so many times. Now I'm going to be very honest. I'm a bit... I want to be careful that my words are not unparliamentary in terms of the fact that as a people, as a country, that we've had to do that so many times in history. And so the question becomes, at what point do we stop? At what point do we ensure that people take responsibility for the things that they are supposed to do? And Mr. Deputy President, when I stood on a point of order just a little while ago, it's because I was a bit confused about what the member opposite was saying. Because what I understood it to be is that the interests in relation to the tax payable would have been waived. What threw me off a bit is to hear him speak in terms of the principle and why is it that they're not being made to pay. And I think they should be made to pay. And if that in fact were what the Prime Minister was proposing, to waive the principle, what they actually collected from the consumers, then I would have a really different stance on it. And I think what it does is that if you remove whether it's the interest or the penalty, you're assuming here that for whatever reason they're unable to pay, but it has been compounded with interest and penalties, and so you relieve them of the interest and penalties, give them an amnesty in the hope that they will now be able to actually remit the amount to the government. We understand very clearly that the collection of tax is one of the ways that government funds fund their budgets, and so we understand the importance of that. But again, like I indicated, we have to ask the fundamental question: why is it that over the years we've seen this very measure so many times? And I'm going to drop this here, not because I think that it's, but maybe just because I want to be petty about it. That it's funny how we speak so differently when we're on the other side. This measure, like I said, it's something that has been done so many times before. It was done under the previous administration as well, where in the Fight to Stay Alive, one of the measures was a tax amnesty. This very thing, I don't think that there is much difference between what is being done now and what was being done then, there was a proposal for 100% waiver of penalties and interest at the time, and it was on a wide variety of the taxes collected. There was also the write-off of tax liabilities, and they were categorized. There were different percentiles based on whether it was in terms of what time they paid it. So there was a category of the waiver of the penalty, whether it's 80% or 100%, depending on at what periods they paid it. And so, like I indicated, it is something that has been done before, but we need to look at. I think it's important that we look at the Inland Revenue Department and determine where perhaps we can beef up the ability to actually be aggressive about the collection of these monies, because like the colleague rightfully said, and I finally get something to agree with him on, that these business places have actually collected VAT, for example. It means that if the commodity is $200, the additional that the consumer pays should not be considered part of their profit or their surplus, Mr. Deputy President. And so they have a responsibility to remit it to the government because they've collected it on behalf of the government. And so I know that in times past there were suggestions from the Inland Revenue Department that probably we need to review. I knew there was a time, and I'm not too sure whether they actually started doing it, but in terms of the enforcement unit, the ability to garnish the accounts of these businesses, to be able to actually go in the accounts of these businesses and retrieve what is actually due to them. In many cases, you find that some of the businesses actually, they submit the remittance form for VAT, but without the accompanying payment, without the accompanying check. And even when it means when the remittance form is done, the Inland Revenue actually know how much they're supposed to collect. But do they have the ability to actually go into the business's accounts and collect what is due to the government? Are there other measures that can be put in place to ensure that they do it? Perhaps there needs to be a more robust public relations component attached to the Inland Revenue. Attached to the Inland Revenue Department that actually perhaps maybe and I'm going on a whim here, I'm saying maybe some of these businesses even do not understand what is it that they're supposed to do. And I think there needs to be a robust public relations program so that they know if you collect it, it doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the government. So there must be a way so that government does not continue to be in that predicament where government after government has had to give waivers of taxes and penalties to whether it be VAT or property tax or pay to these businesses. It's supposed to be paid. It's supposed to be paid. So like I indicated, there must be a way to mandate the collection. Perhaps we need to go back and look at the mandate of the Inland Revenue. Maybe we need to go back and look at the acts such as the VAT Act and these others to see where we can probably put additional measures in place to strengthen it to ensure that that is done, Mr. Deputy President. And so again, you know, you have to ask the question, why? Why is it that they've not done it? Is it that there is a lack of capacity within the organizations to be able to tabulate it properly? Are they using the proper computerized system that automatically calculates the VAT deduction so that you know at the end of the period what amount that you need to remit? And so again, I think that if perhaps there is a need for greater personnel in the Inland Revenue Department, that we need to look at that and ensure that we give them these resources to ensure that they are able to perhaps strengthen these deficiencies in these businesses so that they do what they are supposed to do. And I want to reiterate, like the member did, that whatever they collected, it's not theirs. It's not supposed to be it's not supposed to be on your book as profits or as surplus. That's not what it is. It's a tax liability, and you need to be able to remit it efficiently. And so I support the move by a government once again to give that level of comfort to these businesses that, look here, we're giving, let's do the give and take. But I think that we need to come to the end of that cycle of give and take. and what is due to the government needs to be paid. And of course, the benefits of collecting the tax efficiently is also beneficial to these very businesses, because whatever the government will use the tax collected to do within the country benefits these businesses, whether directly or indirectly. And so I just wanted to make these interventions and make these suggestions, Mr. Deputy President, on this bill before us. Thank you.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy. When I presented this bill earlier, you would have noted that I must have spent about a minute and a half in the explanation, because it was pretty routine, and it's something that, as was correctly stated, has been done before. It is not anything new. We can agree that we shouldn't be in a position where the government has to resort to giving tax breaks to businesses. But the reality facing us is that some of the businesses have not remitted the taxes that they've collected, and they ought to be remitting the VAT collected within 21 days. It's not happening. But I did not expect to be standing here even to rebut anything on this, because I think some of the arguments raised are, in my opinion, mischievous. So, Mr. Deputy, I'm hearing a whole, first of all, nobody stood on their feet here and mentioned Sanders. The person who spoke about Sanders was standing over there, and he made his own argument, and then, as they say, ijoué musically et qui dansait la was. So I don't know that anyone here, I can't remember anyone here standing up and speaking about Sanders. He dances his own tune. But Mr. Deputy, may I just say, I don't think that Sanders needs the former Minister for Tourism, who is now on the opposite side, to come here to plead their case or to come here to cry on their behalf. I think Sanders right now is building hotel rooms under the government of the St. Lucia Labour Party. That's what's happening with Sanders. They are increasing our room stock, something they did not do while it was apparent, as the senator claimed, that they were doing whatever they were doing for Sanders. So I want to give the good news to the people of St. Lucia that we're not here to ask for any pity or anybody trying to make a claim or case on behalf of Sanders. Sanders has moved on, and they are building hotel rooms, increasing our room stock, and improving the capacity of our tourism industry. So I am not going down that Sanders road this afternoon. Now, Mr. President, Deputy President, the argument presented in my 90-second explanation was pretty much saying, look, the government wants to be able to collect VAT revenue. There are businesses who owe the government their revenue they have not paid. There is a penalty, there's interest and penalties attached. So if you collected $5 on behalf of the government in VAT, you did not pay the $5, there are penalties that may amount to additional $2, interest that may amount to an additional $1, making it $8. All we're saying to you, in an effort to be able to collect the $5 that you owe to the government and the people of St. Lucia, we will forego or waive the $2 interest, the $2 penalties, the interest has been waived. This piece of legislation is basically saying we want now to get the authority to waive the penalties, but you still have to pay the $5 that you owe without the interest and the penalties. So we are effectively saying, and contrary to what was suggested by the leader of opposition business, the government is not attempting to allow the business places to keep the VAT money like they did, like he discussed a while ago. We're not letting anybody keep the VAT money or revenue. We are saying to you, you have to pay it back because you collected it and you're holding it in trust for the government and the people of St. Lucia. We are only saying here in this piece of legislation, this has nothing to do with keeping the VAT collected. This has to do with waiving the penalties on the VAT collected. But the business places still have to remit the VAT to the government. A very simple principle. And it has been convoluted into a whole different argument that I will not take the bait to engage in. So, Mr. Deputy, I'm hoping that what will happen out of this move is that the businesses, having been pardoned for the penalties pardoned for the interest, will pay back the VAT that they collected. So instead of owing the government the $5 I mentioned plus 2 plus 1, which is 8, you will only owe 5. So it is, in terms of logic and reasoning and a little math, it is easier for somebody to pay you back $5 than for them to pay you back $8. That is a logic, a very simple argument that did not require 30 minutes of our time this evening. But so be it, Mr. Deputy. I hope that this will achieve the objective that it was set out to achieve. I thank you.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy. As this is a money bill, it doesn't require that we go through the committee stage, so I beg that we move on.
Senators, the question is that the value-added tax amendment bill be read a third time and passed. And I'll put the question. As many of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
An act to amend the Value Added Tax Act, Cap 15.42. Be it enacted by the King's Most Excellent Majesty, by and with the advice and consent of the House of Assembly and the Senate of St. Lucia, and by the authority of the same as follows. This act may be cited as the Value Added Tax Amendment Act 2023.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy. Mr. Deputy President, I beg to present for first reading a bill shortly entitled Health and Security Levy.
Health and Security Levy.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Deputy President, I beg to move for the suspension of Standing Order 49-2 to allow this bill to go through its remaining stages at this sitting.
Honorable Senators, the question is that Standing Order number 49-2 be suspended to allow the Honorable Leader of Government Business to proceed with the remaining stages of the bill at this sitting. I now put the question. As many of that opinion say aye. As many of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Honorable Leader, leave is granted. Please proceed.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Deputy President. I beg to move for a second reading, a bill shortly entitled Health and Security Levy. Mr. Deputy, this bill, like the first motion this morning, is another tick that will be entered into the list of commitments that this government has made to the people of this country. And it also is another initiative that seeks to achieve the comprehensive balancing that we need in the tax reform of this country. Earlier on today, we came here to approve the reduction of taxes on specific items. And what that does is that it creates opportunity to grow particular areas and to stimulate activity. This particular bill speaks to specific areas where there is a need for us to address certain issues, and there is a need for us to be able to have the revenue to back up the policy. So, Mr. Deputy, as was outlined in the Prime Minister's budget for the fiscal period 2022-2023, health care and national security were outlined as the two main areas of priority. And so, consistent with that pronouncement that was made on page 65, to be more specific, on the Prime Minister's budget address, we are here to fulfill that particular commitment, and in the process, we are seeking, or this bill is seeking, to provide the government with a means to raise the necessary revenue. We all know, Mr. Deputy, that the cost of food and other commodities are not as they used to be, because we know some of the external factors, and some of them have been mentioned even by the leader of opposition business today: inflation and freight and other external factors that were brought about by some external situations. For example, the war in Ukraine, that we have no control over. And it has impacted us in ways that have caused the government to have to revisit some of its own policies. Mr. Deputy President, in October of 2011, most of us may not have remembered, we knew, or we have now been able to say, that a similar step was taken. And in case the opposition may have forgotten, a previous UWP government then found it fit and also attempted to justify the need to pass a security levy, a security tax levy. And at that time, one may argue that perhaps there was a specific circumstance in the country that necessitated the imposition of a security tax levy. And so, it is not unprecedented. However, it is now very clear, based on the UN's SDG goal number 3, which speaks to good health and well-being, and also coupled with some of the challenges that we face with security that everybody now can speak of, that the 2.5% levy will be charged to raise the revenue, but to be charged on only selected items, as referenced in Schedule 1 of the bill. And these would be charged at the ports. Mr. Deputy President, St. Lucia, as a small developing state, would not be the only country seeking to find ways to raise the revenue. We have seen similar moves made in more developed countries, like the UK, with the RHS, and Medicare in the US. These are similar moves that have been made by countries to raise revenue to address issues of health care. And so, it is very clear that most jurisdictions recognize the need to have dedicated sources of revenue that are committed or that are to be used for these specific purposes, such as healthcare. Now, in our case, we aren't going to talk about lockbox. I think there was a time when the previous government imposed a tax. Was it a fuel tax? And it was supposed to be for a specific purpose, which was for building roads, whatever the purpose was. So the point is here is, Mr. Deputy President, governments, successive governments, St. Lucia and other governments have found it necessary to impose or to introduce taxes that are dedicated for specific purposes. In this case, this tax is dedicated not for roads, but for taking care of health-related and national security-related issues. And so I think it is important that we provide some examples of what the revenue from these taxes will be used for. So I want to just give a few examples to explain some of the reasons why these monies or this levy will be used. So, Mr. Deputy, the levy will be used on the following: medical supplies, equipment, and medicine. Earlier on, one of my colleagues said that they can't find medicine in the pharmacies. And she forgot to tell us that some of it has to do with procurement and factors beyond our shores. But then, let it go. This levy will help us to be able to procure the medicines that she spoke about. So hopefully, she will not, I will try to, that will hopefully alleviate her fears that the elderly and others will not be able to get medicines from our pharmacies. This levy will also be used to procure goods and products that are necessary for the security, but I'll get to security just now. I also want to make it very clear to the Senate, Mr. Deputy, that there are some items that this levy is not going to be charged on. And I think it is very important that I give some examples. This levy will not be applicable to the zero-rated items that we have in the VAT basket. So the items that were zero-rated for VAT will not attract this levy. So I will give a few examples. Items such as manufacturing equipment, fertilizers, the farmers, we have to remember them. The cost of fertilizers has become a challenge. So that will not be, it will not apply to fertilizer for the farmers. It will not apply to food. And I've heard the Prime Minister stress it so many times. It will not be applied to food items. It will not be applied to baby products. It will not be applied to gas. And in other words, it will not be applied to any of the goods that were exempted from the VAT or the VAT. But it will apply on such products that we call, or that we can consider those that contribute to ill health, like tobacco. I think we know the dangers of smoking. So tobacco and tobacco products will attract that tax. Now, Mr. Deputy President, while we focus on health, we also have to look at the aspect of security that this levy intends to provide support for in terms of finance. We need the revenue to be able to contribute to the efforts of the government in providing more resources to the various departments that deal with national security. Firearms and ammunition, provision of firearms, ammunition, and vests, that is bulletproof vests for the police. Body cams for the police. These are some of the things that we have already started to provide. And these are the types of items that this revenue can assist in providing and increasing our provision to the police. We have the RSS here, and they are not here with no expense. There is expense incurred because of their presence, and we have to take care of them. That is also a good one of those areas that it will assist. We are now in the process of repairing the Viewfort police station, and of course that revenue will go towards that particular initiative. Improving the conditions at the Bodyleaf Correctional Facility. We know that in the past there have been complaints from the inmates and from the authorities there of the conditions under which the inmates have been placed. They are human beings and we have to treat them with some level of dignity. And so that will also be a beneficiary. Reopening of the farm, we understand that the farm at Bodyleaf has been reopened, and we know the value of that particular facility in the rehabilitation process of the inmates, and this requires a lot of resources that that can contribute to. We have now announced duty-free concessions for the officers at Bodily Correctional Facility. And only yesterday, I met one of them, and he says, finally, it's not just the police and the customs you're checking on us, because they felt that maybe they were somewhere down in the strata. So that is also good news for them, as well as the employees of SLASPA. Mr. Deputy President, we have been doing it, but we believe that we must continue to provide the police with adequate transportation so they can get to where they need to go and respond adequately to calls in the form of vehicles. I think we have provided a number, about 25 or so, but we continue to make sure that we improve the fleet of vehicles for our police officers. Training. There was a serious issue with training when we got into government. The training vault was absolutely empty. And we know, because of the level of sophistication of crime, the nature of the criminal activities, we need to be able to procure a lot more equipment and be able to have the technology to be more sophisticated in crime fighting, and that is something that we need to boost in terms of resources. The construction of the northern headquarters in Grosley, Mr. Deputy, is another initiative that will attract some of the attention of these monies. The construction of the halls of justice. Remember, Mr. Deputy, what happened to custody suites? Now we have criminals, if they are arrested or alleged perpetrators, they have nowhere to put them. And police officers may have to release people prematurely because you have nowhere to put them. We also have been collaborating with the government, the French government. We had recently the Prime Minister and some other officials of the Ministry of National Security went on a trip to Martinique to engage in collaboration in terms of the way we fight our crime activity in between the two countries, the situation on the sea, border control issues. All of these initiatives generally amount to increase in expenditure, and that we have to fulfill, that we have to meet with such a levy. So, Mr. Deputy President, I believe that the levy is not simply a tax just for a taxing sake. It is actually an initiative that is going to help to fund some of the policies and programs that we have announced. And just to add up a few more on the health issue, Mr. Deputy, the Health Minister did make mention of a few, and I can just, for the benefit of this chamber, remind us of some of them. The 80+ initiative that we had so much discussion about earlier. Maternal health care, you've heard about the ultrasound and the lab tests that we are now having for the pregnant women. The programs that we have for universal health care, not health insurance that we didn't see anything about. The fallacy of health insurance that we're still waiting to hear about, and that the people of St. Lucia did reject. The new polyclinic at VH for the people of Castries Central. Now we have introduced in our schools dental care for grade K and grade 1, that's 5 and 6 year olds. And as you know, dental health is another issue that affects our population, and not everybody can afford it. We have a cancer registry that was introduced, and there has been much discussion on the need for it. And just in case we have forgotten, Mr. Deputy, $11 million was paid to an entity who I don't wish to name, I don't like the naming thing, for transition from VH into OKEU. I don't know if you remember that. $11 million was spent. It's a lot. I think it's 11 million US. But just to be on the safe side, I'll just say 11 million was spent on that particular initiative. And that is money that we have to pay. We have to find the revenue to pay it because it's already spent and it's on our books. So we really have to respond. And Mr. Deputy, this is the reason. These are some of the reasons why the government finds it necessary to find that revenue so that we can respond to issues specific to healthcare and national security. While I say so, Mr. Deputy, I wish to ask our various business places and those who will be participating, benefiting, and making, giving some measure of support to this, that it's a collective responsibility for all of us in this country to ensure that when this levy is collected, unlike what we spoke about in the VAT, it is remitted, and that the government can have the revenue to do what it's supposed to do. Now, I may want to hold back on that particular point for a little later, but I anticipate I will have to say it at some point. But I think there is a tendency for the opposition to jump on anything that is an initiative and find the loopholes and find, but I just want to mention it to them beforehand, and I hope I can engage good discussion on it, that before you decide to jump on this particular one, there are quite a few situations that exist or existed that you need to reflect on. I mentioned one of them, and that is the 2011 imposition of the security levy. But I just want to share with the opposition and everybody in this chamber that there are some interesting situations that existed quite a long time before we came here with this, that I would prefer not to mention now, but if I have reason to, I'll probably do it at the point of my rebuttal. So I ask for the support of the Senate for this particular initiative, and I hope that, as I mentioned, that there's be collective responsibility so that the revenue collected from this levy will be remitted and that it will find its way to providing the support for the various initiatives under national security and under healthcare for the people of this country. I thank you, Mr. Deputy President.
Senators, the question is that the Health and Citizen Security Levy Bill be read a second time. Senator Jody McIntyre.
Officer. Yeah, push everything. What do you need to do?
Mr. Deputy President, good afternoon, and through you, good afternoon to all senators. Mr. Deputy President, I crave your indulgence while I offer condolences to the families of those who have been slain in the continued crime wave that has taken so many lives. Our country is bleeding with what happens to be one of the worst, if not the worst period of violent crime in our small nation. I now move over to the Health and Citizen Security Levy Bill, which provides for the imposition, payment, and collection of a health and citizen security levy and related matters. Mr. Deputy President, the rate of the levy is 2.5% on the cost, insurance, and freight value of the goods, and ostensibly this levy is to be used to fund health and citizen security, ostensibly. The levies on goods and services payable to the Controller of Customs and collection and enforcement payment of the levy also lies with Customs. Lastly, anyone who evades payment or collection of this tax is liable to a fine not exceeding $100,000 or to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 3 years or to both. We are also provided with a schedule of goods and services exempt from this levy. Mr. President, the excuse this government gives for needing to impose this levy is that it needs to raise money to apply to health care and security. But Mr. President, in the estimates we note that the health expenditure was decreased by 10 million, while expenditure for security was increased by 10 million. The costs, therefore, balancing out each other. So was there really an intention to fund health or security? Or was this a gesture to pull wool over the eyes of the public? Mr. Deputy President, the excuse the government has given us for needing this levy is that it needs to raise money to apply to health care and security. Yet, only a couple of weeks ago, the Chamber of Commerce raised objection to the imposition of this levy unless there was clarity from the technocrats as to where exactly the proceeds of this levy will be spent. First, we were informed that the levy would be used to finance health and security needs of the country. Then we were told the revenue generated from the levy has no specific designation. So I ask, which is it? And is this money really being raised for the reasons stated by this government, or is this yet another attempt to pull wool over the eyes of the people? Mr. Deputy President, these botched policies on health and crime continue to push the people towards an ever-growing loss of confidence in this leadership and in the rest of the executive. Now, when we decided to increase the tax or apply a levy, we know exactly how we're going to invest it. And we are very clear to the people how we are going to invest it. So when we took the $2 increase for building roads, what did we do? We built roads. We built so many roads that they had to keep telling the people, we don't eat roads. And what do we have today? We can see the evidence of roads.
That's right.
This unconscionable levy negatively impacts households, especially the more vulnerable ones, single mothers and the elderly, and the small businesses that are already struggling and have not recovered sufficiently from the impact of COVID. Mr. Deputy President, we raised the issues around this levy, but the government did not want to pay heed, and they were eventually forced to listen and forced to postpone the original date for placement of this bill before Parliament. Mr. Deputy President, what is of significance in this bill is the items and services listed in Schedule 3 that are exempt from this levy. So basically, the levy does not apply to food items, medicines, gas, and some building materials that do not attract VAT. But let us not forget, bread, oil, bus fares, and gas have already gone up. The people are already saddled with the cost of these basic items, sitting on their backs, placed by a heartless government. A government that is supposed to put people first. When a household has to juggle sanitary napkins and food, don't you think they have to juggle sanitary napkins and plywood? The question is, who is really being put first? Comrades, friends, large contractors? And why the rush? Even the Chamber of Commerce was asking this question so clearly because there was insufficient consultation with the various civil society groups and organizations. Mr. Deputy President, as I said, this administration has already increased the cost of basic needs of the people. The same people they say that they are going to give relief to through exemptions are the same people who have to bear the cost of all those items that have already gone up. So who is this government really fooling? Because they haven't placed a levy on some items, we must be grateful. The people are already carrying a bread burden, a gas burden, a bus fare burden. No hiding from that. Mr. President, this is all smoke and mirrors. But we can see and feel that the blinkers are coming off the eyes of the people. Mr. Deputy President, is it fair? Is this levy fair? And who is carrying the burden of it? As my colleague said earlier, the cost of living in this country is the third highest in the Caribbean. Probably higher than it's been for a very long time. Yet they come up with a whole new levy to place on the backs of these people, of our people. Yes, they say they're putting people first. So I want to know, is this an example, a fine example of putting people first? In fact, they are making it harder for the people of St. Lucia. Throughout the island, people are suffering. Just go to Dennery, go to Gros-Islet, go to Vieux Fort, go to Castries North. People are suffering and they tell you bagay wed. Mr. Deputy President, I am indeed happy to see that there was no levy placed on sanitary napkins. I'm happy that that particular recommendation by the opposition was heeded. All women know what it's like to juggle grocery items, including sanitary napkins. But apparently, this comes as a surprise to some men, especially those who do not go to the supermarket. In the real world of women, period poverty does not have to be explained. Mr. Deputy President, the government wants us to believe that we are gaining some ease, relief, a big bonus by them not imposing a levy on certain goods and services. But what we know is that tax burdens are being placed in other areas. The levy will not be on food, it will not be on medicine, but it is being imposed on other areas of the economy that affect the lives of the people. Don't fool the people. To be able to raise $30 million means it is being raised on the backs of St. Lucians, exemptions or not. In essence, they will be paying VAT, service charge, and now a health and security levy on many goods and services. And at this time, the people cannot carry another tax. Any additional tax or levy will have an inflationary impact and drive down consumer demand. But all we hear is, inflation is not under our control. It's not our fault. But it is the job of the government to come up with innovative ideas and tenable solutions. Not doing so can only lead to more hardship and open the door to more crime. Clearly, this administration cannot manage the economy except through extra taxes and levies. Healthcare is in crisis. National security is in deep crisis. That is because a holistic approach to security must be adopted. Financial support through a levy will not be sufficient. Our police force must enjoy the confidence and support of the people. And the people must feel they can rely on all levels of the police force for safety and security. And at this present time, this has been called into question, especially by female officers and their sisters in the wider public. Collecting a levy does not answer the security problem. Trust, faith, and confidence in the higher echelons of the police force is very necessary, a very necessary component to reducing crime on our small island. Mr. Deputy President, smokes and mirrors can only work for a time. The people are fully aware that they were fooled, that good, sustainable projects were stopped. Now they are screaming at this government, we will take no more. So, Mr. Deputy President, I stand with the people as they say, no more taxes. And I do not support this bill. I thank you, Mr. Deputy President.
Senator Daniel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy President. As I listen to the learned member opposite, and I say learned because I recognize the office that she held in this very chamber, in addition to her profession, which I think calls for a certain degree of erudition. However, I did not find that erudition coming through in her presentation. And at some point I had to ask myself, what reality does she inhabit? And who does she speak for when she references the people screaming at this government that we shall take no more and no more taxes? On what basis does she speak to the people that she is so certain that the verdict of 15-2 has been vitiated and invalidated in less than 2 years? We do not find that kind of outpouring. We do not find that kind of sentiment being expressed on the streets, in the corridors, in the nooks and crannies of St. Lucia. And we are well placed to know, because of the overwhelming endorsement and mandate that the people gave to the St. Lucia Labour Party on the 26th of July 2021. It's going to take a lot to efface it in this time. And it is very easy. It is very easy to become fixated on 2.5%, a levy of limited application, and pay no attention to the many other waivers and concessions that this government has given to make life easier for the people and to ease the squeeze on them. The reality of it is that the things that we talk about in terms of crime, they have a lot to do with our law enforcement and security being under-resourced. Our healthcare situation in this country has a long way to go, and it requires resources. But that's a no-brainer. I don't need to lecture anybody on that. Nobody needs to lecture anybody on the need for revenue. And there is this talk about imposing further hardship on the backs of the people. Well, which one is true? Because on the one hand, you listen to the leader of the opposition, and he seems to be saying, your economy is doing better. It's growing. Your taxes, your revenue, and so on. So why do you need to tax the people further? And on the other hand, we are hearing that things are so bad that we should not be imposing further taxation and AKA hardship on the people. Which one is true? Which one is true? Or is it what the Prime Minister and Minister of Finance recognizes, that with the economic growth that the state is now experiencing, you tax people when you know, when you have calculated that they're able to bear the taxes? And it is because Philip Joseph Pierre, an economist, a genuine one, a true one, a legitimate one, not a pretended one, not a make-believe one, not a bouillon one, not a mixed degree one. A true economist recognizes that if there is a time when the economy and the people of St. Lucia, those who have the means to purchase, can bear $2.50 more on every 100 that they spend, for a limited, definite, circumscribed category of things, that they can do it at this time. This is a time when they can bear it. 2.5% is not 200%. It is very modest. It is very calculated. You cannot be coming here and scream about 2.5% to fund health and security, which are very important needs in the country, when we have universal education on the one hand, when we have universal health care, when we have so many other things where much more than 2.5% is being foregone by the government. This 2.5% has become an obsessive fixation of the opposition. And I can understand why. Because they can't find anything. This budget that the Prime Minister passed was so circumspect that they are hard-pressed. They are extremely besieged to find any fault with it whatsoever. So any taxation measure, they pounce on it, they jump on it, they seize on it, they stick on it, they fixated on it because they can't find anything else. It represents the only opening that they can get, and it has become an obsession. The opposition does not want the government to have revenue or to collect revenue because they want the government to fail. They want the government to be broke. So anywhere that they find that the government is going to make money, they try to attack it. They try to give it an inflated and concocted sense of crisis. Oh my goodness, no kaimo, yoka chuenu, yoka tax nu, yoka tufenu tax. Why in St. Lucia we hearing that? I mean, I heard the leader of government business this morning repeatedly referencing St. Kitts and Nevis. The leader of, sorry, my goodness, that's an almost fatal error. My apologies. How could I make that mix up? You know? The leader of opposition this morning making that continuous reference to St. Kitts and Nevis, how, you know, St. Kitts and Nevis is doing so much better and they have a much better idea. What they're not telling is that while we were here in St. Lucia attacking value-added tax and the 15% and waging a relentless war against it and promising people that when we come, we will eliminate the value-added tax. Oh, VAT was the other obsession. A VAT which came about as a result of a studied, organized, educated, considered process by a body called the OECS Tax Reform and Administration Commission, which recommended the value-added tax, which the Eastern Caribbean countries, together with others, unanimously accepted. The report is there that they definitely show that 15% was the optimal rate of entry. You know one of the countries that decided 15% ain't enough for them? That they're going higher than it? St. Kitts and Nevis. St. Kitts and Nevis, 17.5%. You see the 2.5% that we're making a big deal that we took off the VAT in St. Lucia? Well, that is the exact amount that St. Kitts and Nevis was higher than us. 17.5%. A government came over, took over. A government led by the man he's referencing, an accountant, Timothy Harris. They never even talked about removing that 2.5%. In St. Lucia, what we have done, for pyrrhic and grandstanding reasons, chopped off without any logical reason, a 2.5% of the VAT, and they can't show us what is the significant developmental effect that it had on our country of reducing the VAT. Show me what it did to the country. If the 2.5% VAT was so great, if it was such hot stuff, why did you need to go and to raise the excise tax on the fuel by $1.50 from $2.50 to $4? If reducing the VAT was such a great idea, if it put you in such a good place, why you had to go and touch the excise tax on fuel? And I think that excise tax was supposed to be in a lockbox, if I understand. It was supposed to go in some special account and all this kind of thing. But up to now, nobody can find the lockbox, much less the key for the lockbox. Because revenue starvation was forcing the then government, of which the members opposite were a part of, to go and to do something to make up for the revenue that they did forego in the VAT very unwisely. The other thing that I want to say in terms of what Senator Geraldine McIntyre had to say, pertaining to the private sector stating, I mean, I don't want to misquote her, you know, so if she elucidates on that, but it's like basically the private sector saying that the technocrats, like they don't want to implement the collection of the 2.5% unless they know where it's going to. Forgive me, you can correct me, I'll accept on that. Am I following right? Okay. But in any case, I want to say this. Okay, let's not attribute what I'm about to say to her. If it is a case where Chamber of Commerce or businesses or anybody are opposed to the tax, because they want the government to give them an account or a reason or a justification. Why are you collecting the tax? What are you going to do with the tax? We want to know before you collect it. This would be my response to them. Straight case. And you know, people like to use the word arrogance. They like to accuse you of arrogance anytime you're a straight shooter and you're straight up. My response to them would be, this is not your lane. This is not your lane, that if government has passed a tax, let government pay the consequences where it is supposed to pay it. In the ballot box, with protest on the street, with outcry, with civil unrest if it comes. But it is not your lane to tell the government ever that you're not going to collect the tax or you're not going to apply it because you want to know what they're going to do with it. There's a mentality in this country that for you to prove to people when you're in government what you're going to do with money, that you must assign the money to a particular special account. And that is what we're in, a lockbox account, a sinking fund account, a separate account. Consolidated fund has become something that is like a malediction. Consolidated fund is the central and most secure account of the state. It is the one into which government revenues are for the most part deposited and where they are allocated and utilized with an accounting done according to the way it was budgeted for under the government's policy and appropriations bill. And it is done. So people cannot be outside of their lane and wanting to tell a government, a national government, a sovereign government, a 15-2 government, a government that received an overwhelming mandate, that you must tell us how you're going to spend that money and what you're doing before you collect it. This is not your lane. This is not your lane. That didn't apply under the previous government. The previous Minister of Finance and Prime Minister would never tolerate that. He would have no time for it. He would have made short shrift of it. The opposition must stop behaving like they want to govern when they're in government and they still want to govern when they're in opposition. Their voices will be listened to. And there's nothing wrong with a government listening to protest and listening to disagreement, so that if it decides to do something and it holds consultations with the private sector Chamber of Commerce and they say, hey, Mr. Prime Minister, Mr. Minister of Finance, we don't think we're ready for that. We don't think we're going about it this way. We don't think we have a way to do it this way. And the government decides, okay, let us postpone it. Let us defer it. There's nothing wrong with that, with reconsideration. It demonstrates wisdom, sensitivity, prudence, and a connectedness to your public and to your polity. That's what it means. And you know, in the dynamic nature of legislation, in the dynamic nature of policy, I have said it before, there is nothing wrong with taking a first step and doing something, and 3 months later, you have to beat a hasty retreat. I hightailed it back to this parliament to amend it, to correct it, to fix it. No one must have so much pride and so much stiff-necked ego that if you need to take a second look at something, to revisit it and to fix it, that means you have been a failure. Not true at all. This is not so at all. What it means is that you are showing prudence and wisdom, that you are correcting course as and when it becomes necessary. This 2.5% is not the humongous oppression that it is being made out to be. It has been introduced in a studied manner on an economy whose performance says, at this time we can bear it, at this time it meets certain needs that we have, and we well know what those needs are. 2.5% ain't going to solve the health problems in this country, not in total. It ain't going to solve the security problems in this country, not in total. No more than the vehicles for the police would. No more than universal health care will. Again, I say the opposition must stop deluding itself with the notion that any measure you take means that you are staking everything on the success of that measure. So the 2.5% will be a panacea for everything. Nobody ever said that. Nobody should think so. Government has to be multi-pronged. It has to be diversified. It has to be decentralized. It has to be, in a sense, fragmented in terms of the multiplicity of solutions that it seeks to apply to solving a multitude of problems. There is no one magic silver bullet or golden or platinum bullet to solve all problems. A 2.5% here, maybe coupled with some aid that you get over there, maybe coupled with some windfall that you stumble over there, but you have to move in a manner where you can use a diversity of pieces and bring them together so that the mosaic of the whole, you can join it in a manner that is coherent, sensible, and successful. Mr. Deputy President, I thank you.
Senator Fede.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, I rise to register my staunch opposition to the imposition of this 2.5% levy increase on a range of commodities that will face local consumers. Mr. President, I staunchly oppose this because of a number of reasons. One, unlike the member opposite who spoke before me and said that this was the ideal time to implement a tax on the backs of citizens of this country that's already reeling against a very high cost of living, as my colleague has so eloquently articulated, the price of bread has gone up before this levy. The price of gas have gone up before this levy. Electricity cost, according to the Economic and Social Review, has gone up on the backs of local consumers by 30%. Honorable member, if there's anybody that's out of touch, you are out of touch with the realities of what's taking place on the ground of this country. And so 30% electricity bill, you believe that that's no big deal for people? When your unemployment rate says that it is 16.5%, when the number of unemployed persons in this country would amount to near 20,000 individuals who don't have work, when at present we're in the low tourism sector where people are losing their jobs because hotels are closing for renovation, where those hotels that have, you don't even know that. Look at, you see, this is what I'm saying. The parliamentary secretary for the Ministry of Tourism don't know that hotels are being closed for renovation. And so he is just compounded, and he is just, oh my goodness. Mr. President, I'm going to speak to you because one of the things that I suffer, that I find difficult to deal with are people who are unenlightened. Mr. President, there are people who have lost their jobs, hundreds of tourism workers, because hotels are closed for renovation, a fact. Those hotels that have remained open are operating under reduced occupancy levels. It would mean, therefore, Mr. President, that what is going on is that they're getting less pay because they're getting less hours and they go on the traditional rotation. And so I'm not blaming the government for the rotation or hotel employees getting less hours. I'm not blaming you. But I am saying that all of these factors ought to be considered when you are going to impose a 2.5% tax on the backs of the people. That's what we're saying. So there's no ideal situation that the government can take credit for. The 12.5% growth that we had last year, year before, and the 18% growth that we've had is because the United Workers' Party left a solid foundation for you. Construction and tourism drove the economy recovery that we're seeing since COVID. And so which one of the projects you want to take credit for? Orange Grove Mall? Take credit for Orange Grove Mall. You want to take credit for the road construction projects that have buttressed construction growth in this country and contributed to the economic growth? You want to take credit for the St. Jude's Hospital project? You want to take credit for the Rodney Bay Road which you stopped? You want to take credit? Which one you want to take credit for? Which one? You have done nothing to get an 18% growth, and you are talking about an 18% growth. But I'll tell you where this administration has gone wrong. Because you see, we always analyze the situation, whether we are economists or we are laymen. We always ensure that we take our time to understand the economic realities. So even though the economy grew by 12% and 18% concurrently in 2 consecutive years, what has happened is that the economy has not returned to COVID-19 levels. And so to say in this honorable house that somehow that the Minister of Finance is such a genius economist, that he is considered the economic growth, and then has analyzed that we're in the best circumstances economically to impose a tax, that is erroneous, and that is SLP economics that hasn't worked ever in this country. Put you to manage the economy. What did you do? Come in 2011, okay? 0% in 2012. Look at the figures. -% economic growth. So while the economic growth, page 90, I think, of the Social Economic Review showed that the economy in 2021 had grown by, just make sure, I give you the right page, page 90, I think it is. Yeah, page 90, right here. So on page 90 of the Social Economic Review, it showed that in 2019, the revised figures for the GDP was $5.547 billion. COVID came, it went down to $4.1 billion. It recovered slightly in 2021 to 4.6 billion. Last year, your preliminary figures showed that it is still below the 5.5 billion. And so while you're going to count double-digit growth, it still has not recovered. People are simply not doing well. Colleague, your point stands. So you can bawl about 18.1%. You have done nothing. You cannot tell me anything. I will sit down. I will yield my time to any member on the other side, Mr. President, to tell me what have they done to inject growth in this economy. They have done nothing but benefit from United Workers' Party projects. And the latest of those projects, and I was very happy to see them sipping champagne at Cabot. I was very happy to see that. I was very happy, a project that you so vehemently criticized, that you went and you were there shamelessly cutting the ribbon and sipping champagne when you misled St. Lucians that this was a bad thing that was happening in the country. And such is the barefacedness of the St. Lucia Labour Party, the duplicity and the double standards with which they come to the Honourable House to pronounce on matters of the economy. If the United Workers' Party gives the people a break on VAT, it's a problem. If they do it, it's okay. If the United Workers' Party imposes a tax that is specific to improve the road infrastructure, to increase productivity, bring convenience for new citizens, it's bad. But I'll tell the member one fundamental difference, because he asked the question about why did we, having reduced VAT, why is it that we had to impose $1.50 an excise tax? Now, let's look at who are the people that would be affected if you put a simple tax on gas. These are people who can buy cars. These are middle-class individuals. These are small business. These are business people, bus drivers. Okay? These are not the poorest of the poor. When you implement this levy, you are affecting vulnerable citizens of this country. That's the fundamental difference. That's what we're trying to tell you here today. So don't confuse the two. Don't confuse the two at all. You have absolutely no authority to stand on. There's no economic reasoning for that. And so I disagree vehemently that this tax, my colleague is right, this is coming at a time when you've already picked up record revenue. The revenue shows that in 2021, estimates, and we are using empirical evidence to back up arguments that we make. We don't just go and pick up some Facebook Labour Party narrative that you go out and you put there so that your supporters can follow, right? We use the stats that you have provided. That's what we've provided. The estimates, you have the social, this is the estimates. And so now, tax revenue in 2021, 2022 showed that there was $951 million. 951. right? In 2022, tax revenue mounted to over 1,073,823,568. Now, this means, Mr. President, that there's a difference of $83 million in new taxes that this government has picked up. And it represents the highest tax that any administration has ever picked up in tax revenue. They've had an outstanding performance based on the solid foundation that we've left to them. And you know, the latest excuse I've seen from them was their Minister of Tourism suggesting in the public forum that even though we have lost tremendous airlift, because one of the things that we did with COVID is we ensure that we gave this government a massive amount of airlift, so that people coming from Chicago, people coming from JFK, people coming from New Jersey can get to St. Lucia. And so by creating competition on those routes, what we did was ensure that the competitiveness of the tourism industry, the anchor of the economy, that industry can thrive. And what has happened is that they have squandered the great opportunity. We've lost American Airlines from Chicago. We've lost American from JFK. We have lost JetBlue coming out of Newark, New Jersey airport. We have lost the second Miami flight. We have lost American Airlines from Dallas. You know what I put that down to, Mr. President? You know what I put that down to? I put that down to incompetence on the part of the administration. And so there's nothing you have done. The social economic review clearly states that tourism and construction drove the economy, none of which in those sectors that you have done nothing to stimulate. In fact, if you had not stopped the project, how much better this country would have done. That is the fundamental point. If you had not stopped the projects, and you know, all these allegations, baseless allegations of corruption, where is the evidence? Where are the reports on a serious matter like that? But again, like my colleague said, you are blowing smoke in the people's eyes. You are there to mislead and to politicize every aspect of the management of this country, which is why, you know, I cannot continue. Yeah, because you're great politicians. I give you all that. You're great at politics. And but you're good at politics, but bad at managing and developing the country. That's what you all are. Bad at management and developing of the country. But you all are fantastic politicians. Give you all that. Give the Labour Party a script and a PR campaign. They can manage it well. I concede, yes, of course you all can. You all do it every day, right? But put you all to manage the country. An absolute nightmare, an absolute disaster. Look at the crime situation in this country. Look at crime. And this bill really comes to improve the crime statistics. And I'm going to get to crime. But I'm dealing with the economic circumstances right now. People are bleeding. People are feeling it. People don't have jobs. People don't have new opportunity. There is no escaping from economic growth. My colleague said it this morning. There is no escaping from creating jobs. If you want to increase taxes, you don't have to raise the rate of a tax always. Do your work, grow the economy. Make sure that you grow the economy, and once there's increased economic activity, once you empower more workers of this country, once you create new jobs in this country, the taxes will go up. That is a very, very clear indication that has happened with a growing economy. But you have not ever in your history. You can't take any credit for that. Name me one policy that you have done. Name one project in this country. I'm going to sit and yield. If you can, and I challenge anybody on that side, name a major project that you have instituted that can grow economic growth. If you are a man, do it. But none of you can, because you have done nothing. You have really done nothing. And I feel so passionate about this, Mr. President, that I have to spend some time talking about it. The 18% that the Labour Party is applauding itself for comes on the back of the hard work of the last cabinet of which I belong. And I say that unwaveringly, Mr. President. And so, while we have a high inflation rate, and I must say, very, very high, while we have failed to give the people income support, while we have failed to cushion the blow, Mr. President, we come and we impose this tax. People already have to pay a high CIF price. People already have to pay duties, import duties. People already have to pay VAT on some of these issues. And you come with a 2.5% tax again, and you tell us that you care about the people. You simply do not care. So, Mr. President, it's not easy when the Labour Party administration is in power. Mr. President, look, we had a more difficult circumstance with COVID-19. And I remember very well how difficult it was to manage this country with COVID. We saw, and the numbers are here to show, that the economy reduced by 25%. While you are there boasting about 18% growth, COVID decimated this economy with a 25% decline. The revenues of this country declined by 20%. 20%. And it was in those circumstances, all of the things that you say you cannot do, we did it. We did it. We did it. The increases that you're boasting about that you implemented on salaries for the civil servants, who do you think negotiated that? We did it. We did it. The income support that you promised the people and have not paid them, that when they vote for you, because you campaigned on it, and you came into government, and now you deny that you never said it. We did income support for the people in the worst times of this economy. We did it. We did it. We gave electricity support. Electricity support to thousands of St. Lucian families. We did it. Where is your support? Electricity has risen by 30% according to your stats, and you have done nada for the people of this country. And you want to talk about you care? You don't care. We mobilize support for the farmers of this country. We gave seeds and fertilizers. We gave them a guaranteed market. With the economy down by 25%, having lost its fervor. We did it. We didn't talk about it. We did it. We invested in the construction sector. When you told the people that it's not about roads, we ensure that we worked hard, that we mobilized the best talents of the civil service, and we harnessed the creativity and the ingenuity, and we ensure that the fastest implementation you have seen in public sector projects happened during the COVID time because we understood the sensitivity of the economy. We gave you all the Millennium Road. Look at the mess you all are creating. Look at the mess you all are creating. Can't manage. Can't manage, and blaming everybody else except your failed management. And you want me to trust you guys? You want me to support your piecemeal measures because you're running out of time and because you have failed to grow the economy. If you had not stopped a lot of the projects, if you had removed your focus from Alan Shastney and Bradley Felix, you could have grown the economy, but your focus is wrong. Everything is about settling political scores rather than dealing with the fundamental issues that bring about opportunity, growth, and relief to the people of this country. And so while the economy, of course, boomed after our investment in it, after our hard work to get it going, you could not keep a pace. And so you have to increase this tax because you're running out of time. You're running out of time. You're running out of time, and you know it. And all around you go. And my good friends say, oh, we are supposed to know best because of 15-2. 15-2, great, my brother, congratulations. But that was a long time ago. That's 2 years ago. Call elections now and see what will happen to you. Call it now. Call elections now. And so, therefore, you're running out of time. So you have to do this. You have to make people feel, let me give you plywood. Because that's for the politics. That's not because you really care, right? You have to come now and say, well, we're going to do this for you. We're giving the teachers this. We're doing that. We're doing that. Because you're losing time. You have nothing to show. Nothing to show that you have started and finished. And that's the absolute truth with your management of this country. And so, Mr. President, during that time, I want to say to you, Mr. President, with my colleagues on the opposite side as my witness, that we implemented zero taxes on the consumers of this country during the COVID-19 pandemic, with a less than ideal economic circumstance. Zero taxes on the consumers of this country during the management of the economic crisis brought about by COVID. And that is an absolute fact. But what do? You have great taxes. You have a great economic condition. You have the most ideal economic circumstances that the UWP has left for you. And instead of you using that momentum that we have left to continue the growth, what you're going to do is impose a tax on the backs of the workers of this country. And in the same sitting, you're coming here with a bill to give the business people a break on their penalties for VAT? And you want to tell me that you have your priorities right? No, you don't have your priorities right. You don't have your priorities right. When you come with measures like these, and we put it all together in a matrix, we see that you are favoring the businesses today. Today is about big businesses. It is not about the small people of this country. So my colleague is absolutely right. This sitting is not about the have-nots. It's about for the people that already have. And that is the Labour Party. They give with one hand, Mr. President, and then they take with another hand. What's the point? And that is what this today is all about. We give you a VAT relief, but today now we're going to take back what we gave you with the 2.5% increase on so many other commodities. So don't tell me what you give teachers. You give teachers $116 a month. That's what you're talking about. 1,400. You lump it together so it can sound nice, but you forgot to say that 1,400 is not per month. It's annually you're giving the teachers that money. So by the time they buy a couple boxes of crayon, they're broke. They still have to go into their pockets. So who are you fooling with that kind of stuff? Who are you fooling? Who are you fooling? And so, Mr. President, I'm sorry with that. We are not convinced. We are not impressed, Mr. President, that this government knows what it's doing. Now, I want to focus on a bit here, Mr. President, on the national security aspect of this. My colleague has already said that when we look at the budget, we don't see in the projections going forward in the next 12 months, Mr. President, that there is any increase. So the $30 million that the Chamber of Commerce is confused as to whether it's going to the consolidated fund or whether it is going precisely to healthcare, we see where the truth is. Because it begs the question that if at the time of planning the estimates of revenues and expenditures, why is it that we see a decline in the monies allocated for healthcare in this country by $10 million? Why is it that if the government was planning to put this money into healthcare, why do we see not an increase but a decline? So if you are imposing a healthcare tax, explain to me why the cost of healthcare, why your health budget in this book has gone down. And why is the Chamber of Commerce confused about the application of this tax after consulting with the technocrats of this country? What is going on? What is going on? It begs the question, where is the confusion? It reminds me of my colleague earlier who stated that, you know, if you buy 2 bags of cement, the 12.5% would buy you a 3rd bag. And which really adds up to the Labour Party's math. Your math on the other side never adds up, because you never can calculate and analyze the economic situations of this country in a good way. So the next matter brings me to this, Mr. President. Mr. President, the leader of government business mentioned in his explanation that there are going to be firearms, bulletproof vests, there are going to be upgrades at Bordelais, vehicles, duty-free for SLASPA SLASPA officers and prison officers. But all of this would be an exercise in futility if we don't instaure public trust in the police. Public trust in the police. If we don't give the assurance, Mr. President, that when there are complaints against leading members of the police force, that those issues are going to be taken seriously. I want to quote the Prime Minister. This is what he said about this bill when he was presenting it in the lower house. And so the Prime Minister said this, that from the Police Welfare Association, the letter says that there are accusations against a particular gentleman. He went on to say, the letter says that these accusations have been going around for a long time. Long before my time. Long before my time, says the Prime Minister. It was there, the letter goes on to say. The Prime Minister went on to say in the Parliament, and the Hansard will show, that these accusations were reported to former commissioners of police. Both of them, or at least one of them, have said he knows nothing about it. At least one has said so. He knows nothing about it, meaning the letters. Then the Prime Minister goes on to say, don't mention any names, not myself, to call names in this honorable house. But Mr. Speaker, that letter was copied to me. Prime Minister went on to say. I read on. The Prime Minister went on, nobody has sought an audience with me to say to me, Prime Minister, this is the lady who said that these are the days and that's what happened. Nobody. How can I tell an inquiry on nobody? How is it possible? How can I? See? Goes on to say, do an investigation on anybody, Mr. Speaker. On anybody? Exactly. I mean, how exactly? Thank you. How can I do it? So what do I do when I say, have an investigation, all those who want to have been able to come forward? I mean, how can I do that? Have an investigation on nobody? Nobody is coming for why they are freed. Mr. Speaker, I was the one. End of quote. Prime Minister, in response to calls for him to simply, we're not saying that the allegations which are out there concerning leading members of the police force are in fact true, but the allegations have a very serious implication on our ability to create directional and strong leadership in the police force, the supreme organization for law enforcement in this country. When we undermine the public trust, the public confidence, the own female officers themselves, their confidence in the leadership, what we are doing is that we are disrupting the ability of our country to fight this perennial issue of crime. And so I'm going to use my voice in this chamber to call on the Prime Minister to rethink his position on this matter and do something about the letters, the accusations of a very serious matter which have been made. We're not saying that anybody is guilty. We're not saying that the allegations are true. But the allegations have been put in writing. from an organization that is as serious and credible as the Police Welfare Association. If it is coming from the Police Welfare Association, the least that any line minister or prime minister of a country can do is at least launch an investigation on these serious allegations. Mr. President, it is my view that we can come here, we can give the police bikes, cars, we can give them all the great things that the leader of government business has said that these monies are going to go to. But if we don't correct that situation where the morale of law enforcement officials are high, that the female officers are going to feel comfortable, that they are going to feel that they have some level of recourse for their grievances. And the grievances that are being referenced here today are very serious grievances. And it's not for me to repeat in this house, but all of St. Lucia know by now what this matter is. And when the head of government is going to respond in this manner, I'll say to you, Mr. President, that it is unfortunate, it is regrettable, and I am very concerned about the impact that this is going to have on our ability to solve the crime situation in this country. And so again, the Labour Party must take responsibility. You are in government now. Stop saying that you have been there for 2 years and you inherited so many problems. When you were campaigning, you told the people that you are able to solve a lot of the problems that the country is facing. They believed you, they voted us out, and they put you in. And now it is your job to stop making excuses and deliver results to the people of St. Lucia. And that is the point that we're making here. So take responsibility. Don't hide behind whether the letters were copied to you or whether the letters were directed to you. You have been made aware of very serious circumstances in the police force, a major organization in this country. That organization is in charge with the very sacred responsibility of keeping all of us safe, of ensuring that lives in this country are safeguarded, to ensure that those who are strong don't take advantage of those who are weak, to ensure that businesses are safe, that workers are safe, that people can go to bed feeling less anxious. I mean, it was just this morning I spoke to a mother in Ancillary, and you know what she told me about the death of her young son? She's unable to go to the post-mortem to identify the body. And so when it affects people in this way, that you have your son who has passed away due to gun violence, and you're grieving with such pain that you refuse to go to identify the body, it really gets touching, and it becomes now an issue on the level of humanity that this government needs to stop playing politics with and address these very serious matters as it pertains to the crime situation. Mr. President, I don't need to recite the statistics for you. You know them quite well. But what concerns us is the velocity with which we continue to see young lives. Young lives are being lost almost on a daily basis. I am tired of seeing headlines of bloody weekends. I'm tired of seeing the government behaving as if that it's business as usual. I give this government an F grade, Mr. President, for their handling of the crime situation. The signals they send to criminal elements in this country is the wrong signal. Yeah. Mr. President, it is well documented, Mr. President, some of the brushes that some members of their cabinet has had with the law. And Mr. President, it sends the wrong signal. Their previous positions about those individuals, calling them the most frightening thing to have happened to the politics, and now they've embraced those individuals. What are you trying to tell me, that this is a second chance government that you're running? While the rest of St. Lucia is watching, while the rest of St. Lucia is going through anxiety, where people are choosing not to go to certain public places, where people are choosing in the situation we just had in Viewfort, where they have said, look, some people have decided, even before the schools were closed, that they're not sending their kids because they were afraid of the crime situation, which continues to suffocate this country. And we've got to do something about it. We've got to address it. And when we speak here, we really speak in desperation, because in the various levels of consultation, the government don't embrace us, don't give us an opportunity to come and allow us to express their views like we did during COVID when we invite them to those meetings. There are times when a country is going through a very difficult crisis, as we did with COVID, and we had crime to handle as well. But what did we do? The Prime Minister, the Minister of National Security, we held a national crime symposium, and at that crime symposium, we invited the consultation with members, leading members of the opposition, and we gave them a voice. And so it's very easy to accuse us of trying to be political, but the only place is we have an opportunity to vent and let our feelings be known about this and express our concerns are in chambers like these and in the media when we call our press conferences. And so we're not here because we want to politicize crime. We're here because we're very concerned. We have people that are close to us that has suffered from this crime situation. We have people that we care about that are still grieving from the crime situation that's taken hold of our country and taken a toll on the citizens of this country. And so, my God, I beg the government, Mr. President, through you, to don't operate like it's business as usual. Don't operate that everything is okay because it suits your narrative. Face the reality. I'm not saying that we did a fantastic job on crime. No, we didn't either. But the people voted us out. You are in government now. Deal with the matter. Too many people have perished. Too many young lives have perished. I mean, what could have been if some of these young men had survived? What could have been? How many businesses have we lost? How many great scholars have we lost in the process? And you know, a lot of it sometimes are innocent people who have perished in the crossfire of gang rival warfare that's taking place in the country. We saw that not even the tourism sector is being spared from this, where we see that our tourists are being robbed on a daily basis, while the government has actually gone as far as writing to some media establishments to say to those media establishments that you should not mention the name of businesses in the tourism sector. At least one business it has happened to where there has been crime. And I understand that what the government is trying to do is to create the impression that the destination is a safe place to come to. And the government attempted to do so, Mr. President, because of its own understanding and appreciation that if the destination has a bad image about crime, then it is going to, sooner rather than later, impact the crucial tourism sector upon which the economic fortunes of this country is hinged. So I get that, and I understand that. But the government has to face up to reality. Stop playing it cool. Let us harness the very best potential of this country, civil society, the private sector. It is time to have a holistic to this situation and stop playing games with this. So, Mr. President, I thank you for your time here today. This matter continues to be an important one upon which we continue to advocate for action to be taken within the police force. So in addition to all of this, in addition to the extra monies that we wanna raise so that they can get bulletproof vests and all of that stuff, that's all great. But there must be confidence and public trust in the police force and we call and demand for an immediate rescinding of the said position, and we also call for an investigation into the matter. I thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Jawahir.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy President. I just wanted to make a very brief intervention on the Health and Citizen Security Levy Bill. Mr. President, I sat here and I listened to members of the opposition give their views on them not supporting any part of this Health and Citizen Security Levy. And Mr. President, I had to do some introspection to come up with a reason on their behalf as to why they do not see the need for this levy at this point in time. The members opposite have been going all over the place, from economic growth to oil, to this, to that in Russia, but refuse to understand that what is before us is a critical intervention to tackling a major crisis that we are dealing with today. Mr. President, Deputy President, we have gotten to a place where persons are frightened for their lives. In a certain part of the island, I know we don't want to say north, south, east, west, in a certain part of the island, this government had to react to what we saw as gross. I don't even want to use the word, but I don't even want to say mass murder, Mr. Deputy President. But what I am trying to say is, we did not have a situation where one person lost their life or another lost their life. We had a situation in a certain part of our country where, because you knew somebody who was engaged in alleged criminal activities, that you paid the price with your life. We saw mothers being killed, persons being shot in broad daylight, Madam President. A situation where we had to get the outside support, because in as much as we love to say we have full confidence in our police, we do not know it all, Madam President. We do not have all of the answers. And we saw from last year, this time around last year, the support of the regional security services. RSS was here. And I can say, hats off to them and thankful for the collaboration with our local police. We had an incident-free carnival. Madam President, whether RSS remains on island or RSS departs, we will continue to have a situation on our hands unless we allocate the resources that are necessary to tackle this crime situation we are dealing with. When the St. Lucia Labour Party came into office, and I will take you down a brief trip down memory lane, as my opposition senator likes to say, one of the first things that we did was reinstate the training vote for the police, which was removed by the previous administration. The people of St. Lucia, if you do not understand what the training vote is, it is an opportunity that allows you to train your police, whether it be emotional support, how to tackle crime, how to disarm somebody. $200,000 was removed as a budget item under the previous administration's budget. A critical intervention to invest in our police officers. First thing we did was reinstate that. Madam President, the Prime Minister spoke in the lower house briefly of his trip to the Grosile police station with the Member of Parliament for Grosile. And Madam President, if any one of you here ever have 5 minutes to spare, take a walk in the, well, you cannot take a walk now because they have demolished it. But if you had the opportunity to take a walk in there, you would have seen the deplorable conditions that the police officers were living under, Madam President. Deplorable. And the Member of Parliament on the opposite side says that in 5 years, 6 years, they did not implement any taxes. But you know where they got the money? In 5 years, they borrowed almost $500 million for COVID support. They borrowed and borrowed, Madi Puete after Madi Puete, Tuesday after Tuesday, Madam President. And what did we see? Not one intervention in that direction, Madam President. La vérité, Codice Munla. Not one intervention in that direction. The St. Lucia Labour Party has come into office, and can you imagine, the Prime Minister understands that this is a critical place we are in. The entire budget focuses on the health and safety of our people. How can we not prioritize your safety, Madam President? How can we not prioritize the safety of the members opposite and that of their family? Crime has no identifier. It doesn't look at you, it doesn't look at me. It's in the situation at the moment. Whoever gets it pays the price. And it's a sad state that we are living in, Madam President. This is a bill where the opposition should be saying hats off to the government. We support it because we understand that this is a situation that affects every single one of us across party divide. When you see your children walking on the streets, you think when the gunfire is flying that people looking to see, okay, I don't want to hit that one, I don't want to hit that one. The bullets are not geared at a supporter of the Labour Party. The bullets are not geared at a supporter of the United Workers' Party. It's if you are in the moment at the time. How much money, Madam President, are we collecting as a result of the implementation of this levy? Over $33 million. Madam President, the Prime Minister, since he has come into office, has purchased over 20-something vehicles for the police. Last week Friday, or was it 2 Fridays before, we added 5 more bikes to the fleet of the police. Over 100 and something vests for them. We continue to invest in the safety of not just Labour Party supporters, but of United Worker Party supporters as well, Madam President. Crime is all of our business. We should be coming here and putting our hats together and our heads together and say, how can we make things better for our people? Intervention after intervention by this SLP administration. Repairs to the police stations, reach for marshal, Madam President. I did not see that happen under the UWP. You know what they did? After they took away the training vote from the police, they took away custody suites from them. No roof over their heads, Madam President. The state of the Viewfort police station. Absolutely no shame. And today, we are in a crisis. We are in a critical place where the call is now for all of us to come together. And I'm not going to take the bait of all what the leader of opposition business said a while ago, Madam President, because I believe that going down this back and forth road is not going to help us address the situation. It requires an opportunity for all heads to contend. Everybody must come together, Madam President. When you look at the health of our sector, of our country, we know the famous quote, the health of a nation is the wealth of a nation. If you do not provide resources to sustain the phase 1 of universal health care, if you do not provide the resources to ensure that diabetes medication is affordable, if you do not provide the resources so the pregnant mother can get a free ultrasound, because nowadays it's over $200, if you do not provide the resources to sustain lab services being free for pregnant mothers, we will get nowhere, Madam President, and we will continue to go downhill if we adopt the advice of the opposition, Madam President. Like I said, this is a critical juncture for us. When you look at the items that will be taxed, that the levy will be imposed on, they're imported items. And if you look, you see tobacco and manufactured tobacco substitutes. Now, Madam President, personally, I will not have an issue with that because I know that this does not contribute to bettering the health of our people. So if there is a levy particularly on that, and I'm speaking from a personal standpoint, then I understand the government must do what it can to be able to raise the revenue, to take care of our people and keep them safe. The levies also, and that was for chapter 24 under schedule 1. When you go to page 15, chapter 19, the levy is also on arms and ammunition, parts and accessories thereof, on imported items, Madam President. But what the levy is not on is on food. The levy is not on medication. The levy is not on certain building items. But at the end of the day, Madam President, if you've come here, Tuesday after Tuesday to borrow over $500 million and borrow and borrow and borrow. And you cannot account for a cent of it, Madam President. The government must find another way to be able to ensure that this critical point that we are at, that we are able to manage it. Madam President, health of our nation is the wealth of our nation. Again, the safety and security of our people. When we leave these doors, Madam President, God forbid, no telling what could happen. This is a time for us to come together. We want to politicize what is happening in the police force. We want to do this, we want to do that. But I am not hearing a call for an end to crime. I am not hearing a call for United Workers' Party supporters to come out and say, enough is enough, let's rally, let's march together. What they want to do, Madam President, is talk about bring an election. If an election is called today, you think you will have the numbers to take over that 15 too? You initiated a march because you were opposed of a referendum that the government, we should accede to the CCJ. You did not even have 50 people outside. On June 6th, Madam President, on June 1st, we stood on the market step the day we implemented phase 1 of universal health care. And everywhere you go, you saw supporters, people supporting the work of this administration. Madam President, this again, I have to say, is we are at a critical place. And I really hope that when the time comes to vote, that the opposition says we are making a stand against crime together with this government. We understand that there is no right time or wrong time to do this and to do that. But the time is now to prioritize the health and security of our people. Thank you.
Senator Nancy Charles.
Apologies, my mic was on, sir. Madam President, welcome back. I sure hope that you're feeling much better. I will try as much as possible to be brief, but this is a matter that is so important to St. Lucians that I will try as much as possible as well to show why I am rising today, and I am rising not in support of this bill, Madam President. I am rising today and I am agreeing with my colleague. Enough is enough. This is too much. And so while I agree, because I have been part of the previous administration, and financing is always required and needed, but many, many times, and this is one of the things that I, Nancy Charles, I have said over and over again, that I admired about the previous Prime Minister of this country, in Honorable Alan Shasley, was his creativity at finding money to do the things that were necessary. And this government shows they have absolutely no creativity, Madam President. All they know to do is tax, tax, and more tax.
That's right.
And so I cannot, in good conscience, moi vle di, jan set li si jodi a, moi pasa si porte, bill sa la, pou mette en lot 2.5 am levi, en le bagay set lisien ka servi jodi a. I cannot agree to that, Madam President. So, I mean, I listened to my colleagues, and I thought, really? One of my colleagues has said that the St. Lucians are able to bear the taxes, and I said to him, really?
Wow.
I mean, you think because you sit on a talk show every day and your Labour Party comrades are the only one who listen and call and tell you that everything is okay, that you think that the ordinary St. Lucians who are hustling and bustling and struggling can bear an additional 2.5%? Really? I mean, where are you from? And the leader of government business, I listened to him clearly. And sir, my good friend, principal, teacher, let me tell you something. You gave me an admonition one time and I'll give it back to you. Madam President, through you, that sometimes when they tell you what to say, I think you need to do a little investigation. And as the old people used to say, fais jouch pow avant disayo do pudi. Because I will show you, surely, and it is not me, but I will show you surely today that so many of the things that you've spoken about, that you've listed, firearms and ammunition, body cams, police headquarters, halls of justice, the 80+ services, maternal care, universal health care, polyclinic, cancer registry, dental health care. I tried to write down quite a few of them. I can't find them. I can't find them. And I'll tell you why, Madam President. I'll tell you why. I think that everybody, I'm going to start my presentation on the premise, and I may not be the best, but it is acceptable or it is noted or it is a fact that you cannot spend $1 of government's money if it is not approved in the estimate of expenditure. Is that correct? I hope I am correct. So if I am wrong, please correct me. But this is how I'm going to start. And if I am correct, then the estimates of expenditure for 2023-2024 sets the premise of the collection of that $33 million. The $33 million, I think I wrote down what the member said, you know. He said something about the $33 million as if it's nothing. It's kind of like not a lot of money. And I thought, really? $33 million is not a lot of money? No, he said it, sorry. He said a levy of limited application. To raise $33 million, you're telling me it's limited application, but it can raise as much as $33 million? I took note of that. So right now, $33 million is not a lot of money, and it's limited application. I can take that. But the leader of government business said that the revenue is to back up the policy. And I waited. As a matter of fact, I have to say to you, Madam President, that in preparation for today, late notice, because as you would have known, our colleagues were not able to make it. And when we were told yesterday afternoon, I really didn't have time to look at the previous sitting. So I spent almost 2 to 3 hours listening to what was happening in the lower house, is it? The presentation made by the Prime Minister, to make sure that I got whatever it is the policy position was going to be on this matter. I have to tell you, I got a headache. I heard Alan Chasney, UWP, Alan Chasney, and previous. That's all I heard. I could not write down one thing on a piece of paper that the Prime Minister said that I would be able to refer to in my presentation today. It seems some people are eating, living, breathing Alan Michael Chasney and the United Workers' Party. But we will get to that. And so, I am saying to you, Madam President, that if this government is serious about the poor people of this country and truly want to help, to raise $33 million to go towards health and security, they would not put an extra 2.5% of the backs of St. Lucians. Does this government not understand that things are already hard in this country? People can barely eat in this country. Madam President, but I can tell you, maybe with one stroke of a pen, just one stroke, one policy decision, how the government can raise or save or have access to $33 million in their coffers towards the health and security levy. And I see you looking at me curiously, so I'm going to tell you how. Just one stroke of a pen. In these estimates, Madam President, consultancy votes increased from $81 million last year, 2022, to $122 million this year, an increase of $41 million for consultancy. Job for the boys, girls, friends, families, everybody. So in one stroke of the pen, the Honorable Prime Minister, who's the Minister of Finance, can say, we will reduce our consultancy by $33 million because crime and security is important, and we will take that $33 million and put it towards crime and security. Is that not a fair assertion? I think it's a fair assertion, but anyway.
Budget for jazz.
I don't know. I just looked at one of them for now. And then I asked myself, all these additional people that are being hired and fitted here, there, and everywhere. And let me tell you something, Madam President. They will be shouting over there, you know, but you all did it too. But that's the hypocrisy. That's the hypocrisy of it. That when they are in opposition and you do it, it's the worst thing ever, etc., etc. The day they step foot into office, that policy change, it's the best thing ever. They can do it, and they should do it, and it's the only way to do it. That's the hypocrisy. So when we say it's not good on one side, Madam President, on the other side, when the shoe is on the other foot, the IPABO too say it's not good as well. There are many other areas that if this government is serious about health and security, I can tell you that they can cut. And I'll tell you a few of them. They can cut the $1 million that they have allocated to refurbish the house of the wife of a strong member of the St. Lucia Labour Party in Washington, D.C. $1 million, Madam President. They can cut that. They can cut the housing and entertainment vote. It's in the budget, $1 million. Yes. They can cut the housing and entertainment vote that is in there in the Ministry of Economic Development. Entertainment, you have, Madam President. Poale, tea, manger, bagay. I don't know what it is that they want to do. But $1.6 million? Why do we need $1.6 million for entertainment? Tell me. They can cut that if they're serious. They can cut the $5 million grant that they have in the office of the Prime Minister that nobody knows what it's about. And I want to get to that in a little bit. Because I heard the Prime Minister make that statement. I saw the allocation. And then a few weeks ago, I think I saw a donation being made by the Taiwanese ambassador of another $1 million to go towards the fund in the office of the Prime Minister. So I want to ask, how is that fund being administered, Madam President? $5 million, and I think the Taiwanese gave $1. I think it's fair to assume it's $6 now, or if it is that it was $5, but they've given $1 as a grant, so they'll get $4 somewhere else. I don't know. But how is that fund being administered in the office of the Prime Minister? Madam President, what is the requirement to access this fund? Do we apply as any regular citizen? Because it's called a distress fund. What is the description of distress? Is it if my house burned? Is it that I am a single parent, I have 4, 5, 6 children, the father is not taking care of them, I'm not working, I am in distress, I need to take care of my children? Is it if there is a natural disaster, something happened to my home or whatever? What are the requirements for applying to these funds? What would be the circumstances that one can quote if they wish to apply for this fund?
Give me a raise button.
Who reviews the application of whoever is applying to access the fund? Is there a committee, or is it that somebody sends a letter and then it goes to the Prime Minister and he sits down and says yes, no? Is there a what is it? What happens? Does it go to cabinet? Do the cabinet members look at it and review it? How is it that one is supposed to access this fund? And I realized that the communications director for the Labour Party, because apparently I don't know that the government has a communications officer, Nubakatanli, so maybe perhaps she can respond at some point in time since she's the one doing the job. Do you have to be from a particular constituency to benefit for this fund? And I'm asking all these questions. Maybe leader of government business can answer. I see he's writing notes. Yes, maybe, I don't know. Because just seems to be following fashion. Everything we do, you're all doing, so maybe that's part of it as well. Do you need a letter of recommendation for your parliamentary representative to take to the office of the Prime Minister to access the fund? I mean, all these questions, no answers. But today, we want to come to Parliament and we want to raise taxes by 2.5%. So, Madam President, this is a very serious issue. This money in the office of the Prime Minister, and perhaps you will hear a little bit more from the United Workers' Party on this, but I am laying the foundation and I am asking the question. We need accountability, because that's what the Labour Party calls itself. Transparent and accountable government. We need transparency and accountability in the administration of that $5 million that is in the office of the Prime Minister. Another place they can cut, Madam President, the travel vote. You remember a song, I mean, when I was writing this, I laughed so much. You remember a song, Madam President, that they were calling the former Prime Minister Amazona Versicola? You remember that song? Yeah, you can smile, that's okay. We can take a joke. They made a whole calypso on the former Prime Minister. Traveling here, there, everywhere. They call him Amazona Versicola, Ikavole. But let me tell you something strange. Do you know that the traveling vote at that time was $526,000, Madam President?
What is it?
Aren't you curious as to what it has gone to now? $1.4 million. And they wanted to call somebody Amazona Versicola. But the ministers are traveling every single day, every week, every weekend, every country, everywhere, always out. $1.4 million for traveling. But yet still they accuse the former administration of traveling all over. So cut the travel vote if you want $33 million. So much was said about rental, Madam President. Oh, they mentioned the father of the former Prime Minister, who happens to own extensive property all over the island. And the gentleman was renting property to the St. Lucia government long before Alan Chasney came into politics. But no, they couldn't resist it. They had to make a political issue. Rental. And do you know, and are you aware, that they have increased the rental vote by $5 million this financial year, in this budget again. But they want $33 million. Cut the rental. So many useless and baseless increases in the allocations, but yet still you want to come on the back of St. Lucians and tell them that, let me make sure, that it is a levy of limited applications so that we can raise $33 million. That's what they call it, and that will come back to haunt you. A levy of limited applications, I will not forget it. If this government does not understand that the increase in cost of living is impacting and affecting everybody, then I don't know. I mean, I know that the Prime Minister does not go to the supermarket. He said so himself. But I'm sure you do, Madam President. I do. I saw you there with your lovely family. And I'm sure my colleagues on the other side, I know some of them who are family-oriented, they do. They go to the supermarket. And I know they can tell you that every single week, and this is no exaggeration, every single person, tout moun sav sa. Si men sa wala supermarket la, ou gen yon ti be. Be a c'était $4.36. Si men pochen la wale en supermarket la, be a moute $5.20. Every single week, we see an increase on the price of groceries in the supermarket. It's not only food, you know, because I hear my colleagues lamenting, food will not be, food to sell moun ka consume set lisi. It's not food, it's not the only thing that we consume in this country. So when you want to say, food will not be and whatever, when we go to the supermarket, we buy toothpaste. And when we go to the supermarket, we buy soap, we buy disinfectant, and we buy steel wood, we buy dishwashing liquid. I'm just trying to run my head through when I walk the island, all this. We buy everything in the supermarket. So it's not only food. And you seem to think that, if it's not on food, it's okay. I mean, when was the last time? When you go to SNS now, you can't even buy a basically laundry basket you used to go at SNS, and you used to buy it. So now there will be a 2.5 on the laundry basket. The little basins that you used to take to knead your dough to make your bakes and stuff like that. You know these things not too strong, Madam President, right? When you buy them within a month, 2 months, you have to get another one. 2.5 levy on all of that, you know. So you have to consider these things. But they don't go to the supermarket, they probably don't go to SNS, and they don't go to Chinatown, so they don't know anything about that. What about a small bottle of oil? Or a small piece of cheese? These days, the smallest piece of cheese you can get in the supermarket is maybe about $8, $9. You're not getting for $6 and $7 again. No. You're not getting, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying there's levy on it. I am saying that the prices on it has gone up. And if you cannot afford to eat the cheese, to put in the bread, then maybe you'll think about butter, but the price of butter has gone up as well. Well, let's not talk about the bread itself, because the bread already has gone up. So everything has gone up in this country. And not even flour, Madam President. That was disappointing to me. When I heard the Minister of Commerce indicating that they could no longer subsidize the price of flour to ensure that we keep the price of bread at the 25 cents, but they can find $5 million for them to put in the Prime Minister's office maybe as a slush fund. They can find $1.4 million to travel, and they can find $1.something million for entertainment, but they cannot subsidize flour for the mother, the single mother that it's single mothers, Shasnet, these the single mothers and whatever. Y'all care about them so much, and y'all allow the price of bread to go up on them. Y'all allow the price of bread to go up on them. But you have money to pay over $250,000 for a consultant to do nothing at St. Jude's. I think he sits there every day and scratches nails and whatever else it is. Job for the boys. Now, again, as I said, when you do it, it's wrong. When they do it, it's right. It's justified. You know the meaning of that, Madam President? You know what is? Hypocrisy. That's what it is. Pa di pa bon le moun fay, ek le ou mem fay, ipa bon. The latest craze now, Madam President, and everybody knows that, every week now there's a shortage of something. I stepped out for a little while. When I come back, I heard they say there's no rice. I said, well, what's going on in this country? The last time it was no flour. Then there was no sugar. You remember one time there was no salt, Madam President? Now it's rice. So I don't know what is going on in this country, but somebody tell me St. Lucia is not a real place. I don't know, but maybe that sounds true. But here's the thing. All what I'm talking about, we're here in this parliament today to debate what? We're not here to debate on measures that the government is putting in place to bring down the prices of those things I've itemized, Madam President. We are here to debate to bring a 2.5% increase on the price of goods and services in this country. It is sad and it is unfortunate, because these are the same people, Madam President, who sit on that side and they tell you 18 point, what's the growth? 18 point something. When you're talking 18 point, the economy is doing so well. You have 18 point something growth. We saw that you had an excess of $80 million and you still can't manage. And you want to talk about we borrowing over $500 million. We took 5 years to borrow $500 million. Do you know that you have borrowed about $500 million in this cycle? In 2 years you borrowed the $500 million. And the bulk of the $500 million we borrowed was post-COVID. After COVID is when we borrowed the bulk of the money. Before that, no. But now, 2 years you already borrowed and you want to talk about $500 million. But Madam President, let's talk about healthcare. I think we need to talk about healthcare a little bit. So I'm going to go and talk about healthcare. So I'm going to take this and open it to page 467, which is where healthcare is. And this is specifically to the leader of government business. Why am I saying that? Because they tell you to say that it is for health and to improve all those things. And like I said, and I established that anything that you need to spend, it has to be budgeted. If it is not budgeted and you're going to spend outside of the budget, you'll have to come back to Parliament and do what you call a supplementary budget. So So, sorry, sir. So, if there is going to be a supplementary budget, I don't know. But let me show you something, Madam President. And that is what, perhaps, what did you call it, smoking mirrors? Okay, let's look at it. So, on page 467, you have the overall summary of the budget for the Department of Health, Wellness, and Elderly Affairs. And so, line item 53001, the direction and administration. So last year it was $27 million. This year it has gone up to $40 million. And the reason being, you have OKEU and you have that transition, etc. So that money is allocated for that. That's under administration. Under the disaster vulnerability, that is when we had COVID, you had all these things happening, you had 33 million, that has been zero to about $1.8 million. So you see, there's no need for that. So I am looking, that's why I said to the member, I'm looking to where all these things they talk about, where is it in the budget? Because that's both capital and recurrent expenditure, just so you know. And under elderly care, sorry, it was $1.7 million before. This year it has been increased to $2.3 million. $400,000 increase. All right? $400,000. So I don't know if that's for the 80 plus, but if it's for the 80 plus citizen, I suppose I am justified in my previous statement that we are not doing enough. You cannot allocate only $400,000 to 80 plus people for their pharmaceutical care, their doctor's care, etc., etc., etc. It's not enough, Madam President. Ipaniasi. And if that's what it is for. But it's only $400,000 increase. Then you have the primary healthcare services. It increased from 18 to 19, approximately $1 million. And then you have the secondary and tertiary healthcare services. It increased from 69 to 76, that is $7 million. And then you have the respiratory hospital, which is Victoria, which has transitioned, I suppose, $3 million. Are you aware that this does not even add up to $30 million? So you tell me you're collecting $33 million. What you collecting the $33 million for? Where is all the projects that the member spoke about? You understand, the polyclinic and all these kind of things. And you telling the people you want to collect $33 million. Ekipala, it's not there. Smoking mirrors, it is not there. And so, I want an explanation. Perhaps the honorable member can make some calls while I'm talking and give a plausible explanation and correct me, because I stand corrected, as to where in the budget do you have all these nice allocations and you want $33 million for healthcare, but I'm not seeing where it is. Where's the policy position, what it is, what is it that you're going to do in terms of healthcare? And then I want to talk about something that the Labour Party is branding about, and I heard my colleagues speak about it. Oh, they spoke about universal health care. And the member said, oh, they're looking for the health insurance. Madam President, I mean, St. Lucians, I want St. Lucians to understand that we left a policy that would have allocated $75,000 towards health insurance. And we say we don't want it. And the new administration come in and they're touting universal healthcare. And the universal healthcare in the first phase, which is what they can, is only targeting an average of 2,000 persons. Why do I say that? Why do I say that? The universal healthcare in the first phase is only targeting our pregnant mother. When I made the calls to get the statistics, we have an average, Madam President, of 2,000 births per year. That's the average. So I can assume that it is at least 2,000 people. Out of 180,000 people, 2,000 people we are targeting. And we tooting we're doing something so great for 2,000 people, and we left the other. There's 180,000 people in this country. What about them? Let me explain something to you, Madam President. It's something I learned when I was in government. The issue we have with healthcare in this country, and I'll give you the scenario. When somebody falls sick and you go to St. Jude's Hospital or OKEU Hospital, it's an emergency. They call the ambulance. The ambulance comes, picks you up. Well, now I heard they say you have to pay the 150 up front or whatever, but I don't know. I can't see. But the ambulance comes, picks you up, and take you to the hospital, right? When you get to the hospital, it's an emergency. They will take you into triage, etc. They will treat you, and perhaps then they'll put you on the ward if you need surgery, emergency, whatever it is, etc. 1 cent they spend, yet you know, Madam President. 1 cent they spend. If it's not so emergency, because I've been there with my son at St. Jude's, while they're treating him, the doctor give you a paper, you go to the business office, you pay $45 or whatever, then you come back, then you pay for this. But an emergency, they will treat you right away. They will do whatever needs to happen. And most of the cases are like that. That person is on the ward, they spend 2-3 days, etc. When they are discharged, they give you a slip, you are discharged, and you go. $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, not a cent is spent. And so what happens is that the hospital continues to operate on the allocation that the government is giving them. And you have hundreds and thousands and millions of dollars that is owed to the hospital that they need for them to buy medicine, for them to buy bed sheet, for them to buy toilet paper, for them to pay additional doctors, for them to buy sterile things and whatever it is that they need. But they're not getting sufficient money. And so you realize that the problem in St. Lucia with healthcare is an issue of money. And so the UWP administration said, if everybody who goes to that hospital is able to pay for the services, the hospital is able to get the money, then the money transcends into the services, into paying this, buying that, etc. Then you now resolve the issue. And that was the intention with the National Health Insurance Policy that we had proposed. And so when this government came into office, because I was part of it,
coming soon.
We were at an advanced stage, Madam President, and that's what they will not tell you. There is a young lady in the ministry. I'll give you her name after so you can go to her. We had a gentleman from Cuba who has been paid by the World Bank, who had done all the preliminary work. Right. We had all the services outlined, etc. We were at the stage where we were trying to get insurance persons to give quotations so that we can now roll out. We lost the election. No problem. When this administration come in, you're Juba guy, Madam President. And today, they want to tout universal health insurance that targets only 2,000 mothers in this country. And they are important before you say, oh, I target the 80 plus people. They are important. But I'm saying to you what happened to the rest of the population. What happened to the rest of the population who are suffering with cancer and diabetes, and they have all these other health issues that they need to go to the hospital? What happens to them? So you see that the plan we had was a better plan to roll out health insurance to make sure that everybody, every single St. Lucian can access healthcare. Tell me now, under universal healthcare, if every single St. Lucian can access healthcare. Tell me now, is only our pregnant mothers. I have 4 children, and if I can't access healthcare, universal healthcare, because I can't make children anymore. I've done like the CMO said, I've done my part. I've had 4. I leave the rest for others.
Senator Charles, you have 15 minutes to complete your presentation.
I will try to complete. I will try to complete in 15 minutes. But, Madam President, I just thought I should say that in terms of healthcare. So today, we have people with little barbecue papers, fundraising, raffle sheet, all over the place. That's what we wanted to stop, Madam President. That's what we wanted to stop. We didn't want these people to be by the road with a little paper saying they need a donation to have surgery, etc. They would have had a card, a health insurance card that they go to the hospital, show their card and pay for the services. That's the vision of the United Workers' Party. That was the vision of the United Workers' Party. All right? So, Madam President, I want to get perhaps to another issue that's very important, and that's the issue of crime. And because you tell me I have 15 minutes, I'm not going to go into too many. But I looked at the allocation, and I'll just do one, justice, which is page 107. Because I am looking, I thought that since my colleague, she's left, she stepped out, since she said she would have hoped that we would have stood up and joined and unite with the government in approving this measure, fine. I can only approve what I can see, what I can understand. So I said, no problem. I can approve, I can stand up, but I need to see what am I approving. Page 107, Department of Justice. Justice is critical to crime and crime prevention. Very quickly, Madam President. Under the administration, 2.6, 2.6 remain the same. So no new person being hired in the Department of Justice. Under the Cut administration, 12 million, 12 million. No new judges, no new magistrate, no new nothing. But you tell me you want $33 million. And perhaps my lawyer friend, when he gets a chance, he can look at it because these things impact them as well. Nothing new approved under justice. Crown Prosecution Services, 3.9, 4.2. Barely $200,000, $300,000. I don't know what that is for, but barely. Management of vital records, 4.1, 4.2. Nothing substantive. But you tell me this money is to back up the policy. What is the policy? Where is the policy? Nothing for the forensic labs. So under the Department of Justice, and people keep telling you, I'm not a professional, but I hear it all the time. One of the critical things that is impacting crime in this country is the dispensation of justice. You need more judges, more magistrates, you need night court, you need things to clear the backlog of cases so people can feel that they are getting justice in this country and they will not take it in their own hands. You tell me you want to raise $33 million for it. It's not there. It's not there. Where is it? Where is it? So don't come if you're smoking mirrors and tell me you want to raise $33 million for that. It's not for that, Madam President. It is for them to continue to employ their boys, their girls, their friends, their families, and their comrades. Not for the people of St. Lucia. That's what it is for.
Show me the beef.
And so when we talk about crime, I have to say that this is something that we have to start from the top, Madam President. We must start from the top. And the top means that people must have confidence in the police, and that's a problem. The police officers who are here can tell you they hate all the time. People don't want to go to the police because they do not have confidence in some. I have to say some of the police officers, because avant d'y baila, lot muna hasad. You understand? I'll give you a little story, Madam President. I stopped by Tomaso to buy bread, and people were talking about the police and criticizing the police. And a lady just stood and she said, let me tell you something. And she gave the most derogatory terms about police officers that I don't want to say. But the lady said that she had an issue with a gentleman, right? And she went to the police station to make a report about the gentleman. When she went to make the report, they asked her name and whatever, and the officer asked her for a copy of her ID. All right? The officer took the copy of her ID, etc., to make the report. The lady said that within 30 minutes, the gentleman in question, who she made the report, called her and told her that he had her number. He sent her a WhatsApp photo of her ID and said, I know who you are, etc. Within 30 minutes, Madam President. But she said, thankfully, she was not harsh. She spoke to the gentleman. They agreed to meet, etc. She told them, and I don't have nothing against you. I just don't. And she said now they have a cordial relationship. You understand? But these are some of the stories that you're hearing. But when you hear stories, Madam President, of at the highest level of the police department, that there are allegations being made about our top cop, and this government refuses to do or say anything about it, it calls into question whether we are serious about crime in this country. And as a woman, and I am hoping, Madam President, that my fellow senators and yourself, we all need to take a position on this, Madam President. I am not saying that the person or the gentleman in question is guilty. That's not my role. And I listened to the Prime Minister and I thought, what is the gentleman talking about? It's not your role to know who the person is or whatever. You're not a lawyer, you're not a judge, you're not a police officer. You're the Minister for National Security. And if a matter like that is brought to your attention, you need to do the right thing and say to the gentleman, I am hearing this thing. As a matter of fact, for me, it would be best for the gentleman to clear his name. Step aside, let me conduct an independent investigation to clear your name. What are they afraid of, Madam President? What are they afraid of? I have daughters, I have sisters. I'm sure you have female family members. I saw them sitting there. Would you accept that something like that is happening or has happened or is alleged to have happened to a family member, and you sit there and you say and you do nothing just because of politics? That is not acceptable in this country, Madam President. And so I am taking this opportunity today to call on my female colleagues. Some of them want to talk about period poverty, and that is important. But equally important is the issue of rape, sexual assault, sexual harassment. All these things that affect women, equally important. Talk about it. Stand up to your government and tell your Prime Minister to conduct an independent investigation to ensure that we can have confidence in the police. And so, Madam President, I'm sure I have shown through the budget, how much time do I have left? I'm sure I've shown through the budget that a lot of the items and a lot of the things that they speak about, I haven't seen it. And as I said, I stand corrected. Perhaps the members opposite will speak to it. But here's another thing, Madam President. Madam President, are you aware that the previous administration had an after-school program? Policy again. Where's the policy? We had an after-school program that targeted over 20 primary schools, and there was an allocation every year that we had increased them. It was funded by the St. Lucia National Lottery, and the lottery money, according to the legislation, is supposed to be used for youth and sports development. As soon as this government came into office, and we had targeted specifically, Madam President, that's why we had those 20 schools in quote-unquote hotspots and school in areas of concerns. We targeted them first. What did the after-school program do? It ensured that after school at 3 o'clock, between 3 and 5, and you know the situation, Madam President, school dismisses at 3, parents leave work at 4 and 4:30. Within that time frame, the children are left unsupervised. And so the after-school program targeted that to ensure that as small as they were, that you start targeting them and engaging them into activities that will prevent them from getting into quote-unquote unfortunate extracurricular activities. You're deliberately, Madam President, politics again, and up to a day like today, we have not heard one policy statement about the reinstatement of this after-school program. And you tell me you're concerned about crime and in this country. So at the end of the day, Madam President, I cannot support this. I cannot support an extra 2.5% on the backs of St. Lucian when I don't know what the policy is. We had a whole hurrah on Viewford.
You have 5 minutes to complete.
Thank you. I'm wrapping up. We had a whole hurrah in Viewford the last time. They labeled our community. I'm from Viewford, Viewford North, Viewford South, no to say Viewford. That's where I go and sell. That's where I do my groceries. So I'm from Viewford. All right, they shut down the town. They conducted search. I mean, did we get any report, Madam President? How many firearms did they recover? How many persons did they arrest? They labeled the community a crime zone. They passed a specific legislation targeting the community. They can say what they want. Targeting the community. What is the course of action that has been taken? Tell me, people from Viewford, tell me one policy or one thing the government has done since that to implement in the constituency, targeting the reduction of crime in the constituency. One. Tell me. When you make your presentation, you'll tell me one. Tell me what they have done. But what has happened since? We have murders here, there, everywhere. They called it localized. Now it's happening everywhere in St. Lucia. I want to know what is going to happen. Madam President, they had a crime symposium in Trinidad. They went to Trinidad. Did you hear anything from that? Did you hear the Prime Minister come back and say to the nation, this is what we got from Trinidad, these are some of the recommendations, these are some of the things we'll implement. We're raising $33 million, so we got these new ideas in Trinidad and we'll implement it? No, nothing. So at the end of the day, I don't understand why is it you want me to stand here and to support this. And finally, Madam President, I'm telling you, this thing is targeting our small people as I close. When I look at the schedule of services, general cleaning of buildings. So you see the people that have their little pressure wash and they come in and they're cleaning your building and they sprayed maybe government building elsewhere. Yes, they're going to have a 2.5 levy on it. activities of business and employers membership organizations, so trade unions and all these other activities, Madam President, 2.5 kavini puzo. Photocopying, document preparation, other specialized office support activities, all these little people with those little cafes and shop where you go and make photocopies and print your paper and the children go, etc. 2.5% kavini pool. Advertising, critical to small businesses, and you get a little promo and stuff like that. 2.5 kavin pool. 19, other financial services. So we tell them go in the credit union, go in the bank, take a loan, because we give them a reduction of 12.5. But I am assuming that there's going to be another 2.5 on the loans that you'll be taking in the banks and the credit unions. So buy ek yon lame, ek point ek an lot lame. Legal activities, so the lawyers, 2.5% is coming. Architectural and engineering, you want to build your home, Madam President? Well, the architect is going to charge you an extra 2.5. So all these little people, and that is why when my colleague said this is for the big man, you all are doubting. All these little people, look it there. These are the people who's going to get the 2.5. So Madam President, I can certainly tell you, I have looked in this, I cannot find it. I have looked all over, and I am saying this is an abomination on the people of St. Lucia. This tax will not go to what they say it will go to. They say it will go in the consolidated funds. I await to see where and how, and the policy statement of this government as to how that $33 million is going to be used. So I do not support this bill, Madam President, and I thank you.
Senator Lee.
Thank you, Madam President. Just some brief remarks with regard to the Health and Citizen Security Levy Act. From the outset, I must admit, Madam President, that I'm a bit conflicted with regard to this piece of legislation. I understand the imperative of a government raising revenue. Especially given the environment in which we operate. You have reduced concessional lending, you have increased cost of borrowing, so the government must really look to its own internal resources to raise the revenue that it requires. I also tend to favor these sort of broad-based tax levies rather than the more targeted sort of income-based approaches. Because I think, as I mentioned during the last budget debate, what I see happening more and more is relief at the top, relief at the bottom, and the middle class keeps getting compressed and really is bearing the burden of the income tax levies. So when we adopt a more broad-based, consumption-based taxation policy, I believe, genuinely, it's a more fair means of raising revenue. It affects persons on a wider basis, because what happens is you have a lot of people who are taking benefits from the government and not necessarily contributing through taxation otherwise. On the other side, though, I recognize that I heard some conversation on both sides, especially when I was sitting in your position. There is no good time to impose a tax. I don't know that there's ever going to be a time where people say, yeah man, tax me, because that's, things are great and wonderful, and impose a tax on me. So I don't know that we can use that as a reason for not taking an action if it is necessary. But that being said, there must be some consideration to the possible effects of this taxation. And let's be honest, there is a risk of increased inflation. We are in a very high inflationary period. I accept that a lot of that inflation is external to us, but then that means all the more reason why we need to take care of the policies that we are adopting locally to ensure we don't exacerbate or worsen that situation. Now, as I understand it, the tax is almost imposed at source. So in terms of goods, it's adding to the CIF value, it's added on the CIF value. So as the goods come in, the tax gets placed on them, which means that it goes through the value-added chain. In some ways, you are compounding the tax that has been imposed at source. I understand as well that steps have been made to not impose the tax on basic commodities, basic goods, exempt goods and items. But we need to recognize as well that when you increase the cost of operations at any point, even if it's not necessary, especially let's take into consideration a supermarket, because much has been made of the fact that it's not being imposed on the cost of food. But if I have a supermarket, I have cost of electricity, cost of transport, cost of operations generally in terms of salaries, etc. Any increase in my cost of operation, regardless of where it is going to be factored into the cost of my goods. I still want to make a profit at the end of the day. So there is a risk that we are going to create an inflationary situation through this. Admittedly, 2.5 is not a huge amount, but we don't know. We sort of have to wait to see how this operates. But there is that potential risk, and we have to recognize it. The fact that, and I listened to the policy statement underlying the need for us to improve our citizen security and our healthcare, and in some ways, I'm saddened by the fact that we need to do this. Because as the leader of government business quite candidly admitted, we are in a crisis situation with regard to both aspects. Our healthcare situation is in a horrendous state. When you look at the fact that St. Jude Hospital has not been finished for over 13 years now, that we've spent $300 million between the two governments on 2 unfinished buildings. And the fact is, as I understand it, this levy is to help us be able to afford, because we can't borrow the monies necessary to complete these projects. So we've made ourselves worse off by squandering the resources that we've had. And I will leave it to the government to point out all the other areas that we've squandered resources. But that's a given fact. We can't deny it. Both governments have squandered a lot of our funds and have led us to a situation where we are in desperate financial straits. The OKEU hospital, always in the news for some reason, unfortunately a lot of times it's not positive, again, demands a lot of resources to run and to administer. The government has an ambitious policy in terms of improving or increasing, the services at the polyclinics. That again is going to take a lot of resources. But even before we start increasing those services, we have to look at the services that actually are provided now. And the fact that oftentimes those services are not up to the standard that we require. So we have a situation where our healthcare situation is in dire straits. We don't have sufficient nurses, sufficient doctors, sufficient pharmaceuticals, sufficient lab services, and there are a number of reasons for that. I'm not saying that they're all internal to the government, but the fact is we are in a situation where these services are not where we would want them to be. So in a lot of cases, they're not even at a standard where we can now say, well, we have a basic good standard of health. What we're looking forward to now is improvement. We are literally now just trying to get our healthcare system back up to a reasonable standard of operation. And quite sadly, when we turn to security, the situation is perhaps even worse. I mean, I don't have to go into any detail of what our crime situation currently is. And the sad fact is, whereas the murders are the headlines that we see, for every one of these murders, and it impacts on our healthcare situation as well, there are several attacks, several stabbings, several shootings, several incidents that are not necessarily reported. They don't make it into the news, where our doctors are constantly stressed. I'm seeing constant requests for donations of blood. And the sad fact is, because we have all these shootings and stabbings that take up significant amounts of our resources in terms of blood and blood bank services, when persons have other crises and emergencies, they're desperately now having to call their friends and relatives, and I'm always sending out messages to other persons to ask persons, and I encourage every one of us here, if we don't donate blood, please do so. It literally, quite literally, is the gift of life. So if we don't, I would like to encourage everyone here to please become a blood donor. It's not painful. I know a lot of people have a fear of needles. To be honest, the most painful part of it is when they test for your hemoglobin. That's a bit of a sidetrack. The little prick on your finger, that is actually the most painful part. Getting the larger bore needle to take the donation is not as painful. So that's a little sidetrack, Madam President. But the fact is, our crime situation, as I said, is out of control. And I listened to the policies or the steps that are likely to be engaged in. And I remember when we did, I think on the last occasion, we did the anti-crime fund. And I raised the issue and I made the point that we can't just rely on increased policing. Yes, it is necessary, and yes, we must support the police, and yes, we have to give them the resources to ensure that they can combat crime, investigate crime, prosecute crime as necessary. But if we really want to stop persons or reduce persons going into criminal activity, we need to make sure that our social services, and I mean that in the broadest possible sense, not just social services in the sense of counseling and that kind of thing, but all, Senator Charles mentioned after-school programs. These sorts of things need to be put in place. And I didn't hear that coming out, and I'm hoping that it will be part of the fund of what these funds are used for. Because until we can get a handle on the behavior of persons, until we can convince persons that it is in their best interest to be part of society, to not do things that are negative and will harm society. Because to be honest, I find a lot of these persons who are engaged in antisocial and criminal behavior simply because they don't feel any real attachment to the society. They don't see any benefit from belonging to it and from acting in the way that we think they should act. And so we need to expose them to other opportunities and other ways of thinking and other ways of behaving. And to do that, you need to do those social programs. So I would like to encourage, and I'm hoping that when the funds are being used and implemented fully, that social intervention is and forms a high part of the priority. Again, I heard, and I'm not going to go there per se, I heard issues raised with regard to the administration of the police force. And I want to take a slightly different view on it, in the sense that I believe for a long time now, and this is not at the foot of this government, but it's been around for in fact, perhaps, to be honest, almost as long as I can remember. I don't get the impression that there's a proper succession plan within the police force. That adequate effort has been gone or goes into grooming officers who can actually lead. And so oftentimes you have a commissioner who we know is going to retire, because people don't hit retirement age suddenly and by accident. And then all of a sudden we are scrambling now to figure out who is going to replace this person. We try one person acting, then we try another person acting, and eventually we decide that none of them are going to work. We pull somebody a rabbit out of the hat, and bring somebody back or import somebody from overseas or something. This has been happening for way too long. There needs to be, and this is not only for the police force, sadly. I think in a number of ways it's throughout the public service. But in this case, since we're dealing with crime, it is particularly appropriate that we address it. Because what happens then is if persons don't feel like there's a proper sense of organization in the police force, that we know where things are going in the future, the rank and file officers have little or no respect for their leaders. Because oftentimes they wonder how the person ended up there. They have no association with them. They don't understand how that person operates. And command is not something you come up by accident. You do have to be trained in. I can't go into the police force, no matter how qualified I might be as an attorney, and attempt or hope to be able to lead the officers. I don't understand policing from a practical point of view. I don't understand how to command persons in the sense that, in the paramilitary sense of it. And I suspect in some ways we don't treat the police fully as a paramilitary organization. We still adopt a lot of the public service. I can tell my commander off because I don't want to come to work today. What may telling me? Instead of the regimented discipline that has to go into being a police officer. And sadly, again, and this is again a wide brush I'm going to paint, where persons see, we need the power of example. Where persons see a police force that's disunited, where persons see police officers who are not particularly concerned about their own duties, what do you expect the public to do? That is why you get persons who feel they can fly up in the police officer's face and ask them who you think you are, curse the police officers. You know, that those lack of respect, because the police officers themselves sometimes don't respect themselves, their badge, their office. You get the public treating them in a similar fashion. And all of these things contribute to the negative social environment in which we exist, contribute to the situation of crime. Because at the root of it, a lot of it goes to the breakdown in our social fabric. A lot of the institutions that people revered are no longer revered. And I understand there's progress, I understand things change, I understand that, you know, persons have a different understanding of what their rights are. And there's much to be said for that. But by the same token, persons need to understand that with rights come concomitant obligations. You can't expect to benefit from the security of being in a nation if you yourself don't respect the laws, don't respect the authority of the persons who are engaged to protect you, for want of a better expression. So, like I said, I am a bit conflicted about this piece of legislation. I understand the government's policy statements and its objectives. I understand as well the points raised, especially by Senator Charles in rebuttal. I understand the potential benefits. I understand the potential drawbacks from it. And to some extent, I guess I have to adopt a wait-and-see attitude. And as Senator Charles did point out, hold the government accountable if things do not work the way it's supposed to work. They've promised much. They have indicated that this is an essential part of their plan for an improved healthcare system, for an improved security system. I look forward to those benefits, and I will be asking questions, as in fact, I would be very happy if the leader of government business could give us an update on where St. Jude is. We've had some discussions on it. I like putting him on the spot. The last I heard, they were doing cleaning. I drove past it. It looks very clean. But what's happening in terms of construction and completion? I made the statement during the debate on the St. Jude report that the last government, after admitting that St. Jude was a crucial issue, after admitting that they did not deserve to be in government if they didn't fix it, went ahead and didn't finish it. I see the current government doing a similar thing. So unless I'm hoping that persons learn from history, don't repeat the mistakes of history. So I'm asking the leader of government business if he could give us an update, because I think it is relevant to what we're debating, health and citizen security, where exactly we are with the St. Jude project at the moment. So with those few words, Madam President, thank you.
Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, before I proceed with my rebuttal, considering the time, I wish to invoke, ask for the suspension of Standing Order 9.3 to allow the Senate to sit between the hours of 6 p.m. and 7:30, just in case I go beyond 6 o'clock in my rebuttal.
Please give me a second. Senators, I wish to draw to your attention Standing Orders 9.2 and 9.10. I think that's the wrong one. It's here. Yeah. Bring to Senate's attention Standing Orders 9.3, which prohibits the Senate from sitting between 6 p.m. and 7:30 p.m. If a member would like to move for the suspension, and so we are here. Senators, the question is that Standing Order 9.3 be suspended to enable this Senate to sit beyond the prescribed time of 6 p.m. in the evening. I now put the question. As many of that opinion say aye, as many of a contrary opinion say no, I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Leader of Government Business, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President. Try to be obedient to the standing orders and to all proceedings in the Senate, and I will also be obedient to the cause of this debate, which is to seek to have a 2.5% levy to address the challenges, but specifically of national security and healthcare. I want to bring the Senate back to that particular point because this is essentially why this bill was before us. Although for a while I was beginning to wonder whether the debate had taken a different course. Thankfully, I think the independent senator, as independent as he is, spoke just before me, and there seems to be a sense of sanity brought back to the debate. Albeit he challenged me with a few very pointing questions that I will attempt to respond to briefly, and I will respond to the extent with which I have the information to respond. But Madam President, before I do so, let me seek to just look at some of what happened in the discussions that went ahead of him. I saw nothing but a huge attempt to grant charge. I saw desperation, drama. I mean, on some stages it looks fantastic, maybe on a platform in Soufrière or on the William Peter Boulevard. That type of, grand charging and theatrics would probably get a huge cheer from supporters and fans. But in this honorable House, in this Senate, I think the essence of the discussion and the debate will not be missed because of all this theater, drama, and grand charge. And while it was happening, I did not miss the content of what was being leveled. I must say that quite a few issues were raised, so I tried to focus on the content rather than on the dramatization and all of the theatrics. Madam President, I was quite pleased to see another side of our former president, and I was looking forward to her presentation. And it's good to show some level of flexibility. So I thank her for contributing to the debate, and so I wish to respond to a couple of her comments. One of them was that there apparently was no specific designation for the particular levy that we are bringing, or that we bring to this table. I just want to remind the honorable member or the senator that there are two reasons why this levy was brought to this chamber. One, for the purpose of financing healthcare, and two, for the purpose of financing citizen security. That is essentially what it is. And so I don't wish for anyone else to speculate on any other reason why this was done. So I think the answer is actually in the bill itself, even in the statement of the bill. So I will stick to that. I also noted that there was an issue about consultation, and this Chamber of Commerce, what we were forced, something about, I don't want to misquote, but I can remember the terms being forced to defer the date. I want to inform the Honorable Senate that we have a government that is not afraid to admit when we have to rethink or reposition ourselves. We may have thought that we wanted an effect date to be July or whatever time, and then in response to the calls of the Chamber of Commerce and the private sector, we are not afraid to say that we are quite happy, after further consultation, which was explained by the Prime Minister, to have revisited the date. And so I stand here to say that we as a government were not forced to do anything. We were advised, we listened, and we deferred. And that's okay. I know some people on that side will never stand up here and do that. They will never ever do it. even if they know it's true, to say, okay, we accept that perhaps we didn't have the timing right. We accept that we may have to rethink, and so we are coming back based on your consultation. They'll never stand up here and say that. But we are different. Madam President, this is the difference between those of us on this side and those on the other side. And that is one of the reasons why St. Lucians have placed them there. And I hope they have learned that when the government of the Labour Party, the government of the day, decides to reconsider a position, it's not because anybody forces them. We don't have to be forced. I think they understand the thing about force a little better than we do. We don't have to be forced. I accept that there are times when you have to wheel and come again, and so we are not afraid to admit we can do that. Madam President, a suggestion was made that one of the reasons why we have this situation is because we stopped a good, let me quote, a good sustainable project like the St. Jude Hospital. We stopped a good sustainable project? Madam President, I'm just trying to remember who stopped the good and sustainable project for about 3 years to do an audit and ended up out of government because they promised that if they didn't finish it, they should be out of government. I don't think it was us. I can clearly remember it wasn't us. So the statement was correct that a sustainable, good sustainable project like the St. Jude Hospital was stopped. That is the correct statement. But as to who stopped it, I think that is where I disagree. So I want to commend our former president, the Senator McIntyre, for raising that very substantial point, but just to differ in terms of who stopped it. And of course, don't forget, after $300 million, as correctly identified by, pointed out by the independent senator, had been spent. 2 governments presided over the project, but that statement I had to provide some clarification. Madam President, it is very heartening that today an opposition can stand up, can march, can protest, can air their views, and we as a government say, and I repeat that, we will never believe or we never think and never look at any opposition of having lost their right to speak. That is not a statement that is going to come out of this government. And I remembered sitting over there some years ago when we were told that you've lost your right to speak. This opposition, from our vantage point here, we will never say to you that you've lost your right to speak. You have your right to speak, and when you have to speak, speak. There are times we will agree with your suggestions. We have not found many opportunities to, but there are times we will differ and we will say, we hear you, but we disagree and we'll proceed in that direction. But you will always have your right to speak in this chamber and outside of this chamber. Madam President, I heard the leader of opposition business, and again, he's never there when I'm rebutting. I have said that over and over. If you follow the history of this since we got into government, Madam President, never have an opportunity. I don't know if I should rebut him when you know, he makes all of his grand charge and he disappears. So when I stand to respond, he pass Jamela. Madam President, to suggest, and I heard that coming from this seat over there, to suggest, even if you want to take a cheap shot at the government, but at least get it correct, that the closure of a hotel or an hotel or hotels for renovation is a signal that people are losing jobs in this country. Although when I challenged you, try to divert the conversation and say that the closure of the renovations is a temporary thing. But Madam President, isn't it good news for you as a government when your hotels are renovating? They are, they're renovating. They're coming to ask for concessions to bring in building materials. I put my script down because that's, to me, sometimes the opposition must not give so much opportunity for the government to show them up. Why do you have to say something like that as a former Minister of Tourism? I wish he was in. Where is he? Is he coming?
That's what he said, right? He's a tourism.
He's a tourism. You are former Minister of Tourism standing in this Senate as who DPO and say that in a way to suggest that something is wrong with hotels closing for renovation. If the hotels in this country are renovating, is that a signal that things are bad and that they cannot employ people? Renovating, improving the quality of the structure, improving the facility to enhance the product that they offer. Madam President, I wish every day a hotel would come to us and say they're renovating, ask for concessions, expand the room stock, and more people coming into this country. I would be so very happy. But you see, when your intention is to deceive and to misrepresent what's going on, you give information that is contrary and detrimental to your argument. Madam President, by the way, the removal of the VAT, the removal of the VAT on the building materials would be very much welcomed by that hotel that is doing the renovations. I'm sure they're timing the renovation just in time for them to get to benefit. But, Madam President, they believe that we will cower when they try to associate us with creating opportunity for businesses, because they have labeled us as the gouvernement pour les pauvres. It's as if we are only concerned about poor people. We are concerned about every single sector, every single person in this country. Businesses, poor people, middle income people, everybody. So, Madam President, as in usual fashion, the leader of government business attempted to use a legitimate document to make an illegitimate point. So he picks up the social and economic review, like he did some time ago, refers to a particular section on page 90, with all the authority and all the grand charge he can, quoted a particular set of figures to make a point that our GDP has not come back to pre-COVID levels. And so he goes to page 90, makes reference to the year 2019, quotes the figure of $5.479 billion, and then jumps to 2022 and quotes the figure of $5.87 billion to make a point that, well, your GDP has not gone back to pre-COVID levels. But, Madam President, we all are literate here. When he did that, I warned him under my breath. I said, I have the document in my hand too. I quickly got it and I was following, because he has a habit of taking documents to this House, to the Senate, even when he was in government, making reference to figures and information that is not correct or does not reflect what he's saying. Some time ago, he went downstairs to the library and came back and he still couldn't prove what he was saying. So, Madam President, here's what happened. He's making reference to GDP not growing, not to the levels, pre-COVID levels. But what he did not tell us is that right under this very same figure of 5.47 billion in 2019 was a net growth or net GDP of minus 0.3%. In 2019, la pateni COVID, the COVID situation started affecting us in 2020, at the end of 2019. So in 2019, the growth was negative 0.3%. The economy contracted. But when you go to 2022, 1 year after this government took office, he tells you it's not back to pre-COVID levels. Yes, it wasn't. A few million dollars below. But look at the growth rate, 18.1%. He did not see that. He pretended that wasn't there. So that actually shows a total contrast to the point that he was trying to make. So the growth from 0.03 negative to an 18.1 positive is actually an 18.4 positive. The little maths, I can do it. A minus 3 to a to an 18.1 is an 18.4. But again, you know, is like nous pas sali ekui. Et puis qu'a servi social and economic review to bluff. But that bluff ain't go pass. Because I sat there and you see, sometimes when you're doing all your grand charge, you think people will just get carried away with your grand charge. I always pay attention to the substance of the discussion. Good old teacher. Don't worry about all the noise. pay attention to the substance. And the substance of this argument was flawed. And so, Madam President, I'm standing to rebut and to refute that argument. So, Madam President, there was a point made, and by the way, whenever there is a little bit of growth or a little bit of positive to talk about, the opposition wants their credit. It's us. We did it. You get it. You have that growth because we did it. The economy is doing well because you're riding on what we did. But in the same period that the opposition, welcome back. I wish he had heard my... Not always love your behavior, though. Madam President, while the opposition always likes to take credit for any success that the government is enjoying, you talk about growth, oh, it's because we did well. You have good arrivals, oh, because we had all things in place. But in the same period, there's a crime situation. Oh, it's not us. We had no contribution. We have nothing to do with that. It's on you. You understand? So everything good that the country's experience, Madam President, experiencing now, the credit is the opposition's. Everything negative that happens in the country, the blame is the government. But we know that old trick, you know. It's okay. We know that old trick. You take the credit and you give us the blame. Madam President, we take the credit and we take responsibility for everything. So let the opposition continue with the theatrics, but it doesn't change the price of coffee. Now, there is something I noticed that is very interesting. Very, very interesting. This leader of opposition business spoke about 3 or 4 times, very early in the term of this government, complaining that he wants his $1,500. There was a day I actually had to say it in Creole. Esi après 3 mois, leader of opposition business a tellement mal après perdre l'élection. Ils avaient $1,500. I said it here, and Hansard can show that I said it. Because I said it in English, but he kept coming back and asking for his $1,500. So he made a point that $1,500 is important and I need it. You know, he said he needs it because that was a significant amount of money. Yes. But today he stood up here and in this, trying to diss the government's contributions to public servants, is dissing $1,400 that teachers are going to receive in September. $1,400, right? But he was making noise for $1,500 for himself. So now $1,400 has no value to teachers, but $1,500 has value for him. Madam President, we have to be very careful what kind of stones we throw, because sometimes, you know, it hurts us more than it hurts the intended target. So, Madam President, I listened to a lecture and by the way, Madam President, you were not in the chair, and I forgive the Deputy President, but I suspect the leader of government business got away with excess additional time, more time than he was allotted. That presentation was not 40 minutes, but that's okay. For more than 40 minutes, I sat here and I listened to the leader of opposition business giving us a lecture, Madam President, on what his government did in office. So I said to myself, if your government was so prolific, was so prudent, was so effective, and you did all those wonderful things, why are you sitting over there? Is it because St. Lucians are unappreciative of good governance? Are you insulting the intelligence of the St. Lucian population, that they could not see the good things that you were doing, that they could not associate with the brilliant governance that you exhibited, that St. Lucians was stupid and they did not see why they should not vote you back in? Madam President, let us give our St. Lucians a little more credit. And there's someone who always says St. Lucians have always elected the correct government. They have always made the right decisions when they go into the polls. So I sat there and I listened to that lecture and I said, boy, St. Lucians was real stupid. If that government was so brilliant and they ended up with a 15-2 defeat. I still have a lot of confidence in St. Lucians that at every election they will make the right decision. I am not going to talk about who will win and who will lose, but I will always defend the integrity, the intelligence, and the discernment of St. Lucians to see through the bluff and make the right decision. And that gives me a lot of comfort. So, Madam President, I just have about 3 quick things to mention. My other good friend made quite a dramatic contribution, and I'm not going to try to match that because that's not my style. There's a difference between powerful and dramatic. So, Madam President was audacious enough to even talk about travel vote. I sat there and I heard travel vote.
And she went for a week.
I mean, travel vote. But you know, I'm not going to go down that road because I see the bit, but I'm not going down that road. I'm not getting involved in this. Now, when I was in opposition, I remember there was a period of time when the then Minister for National Security, sitting in this chair, had made a presentation on the state of crime in the country. And there was an agreement, an understanding between the government and the opposition that there needs to be a crime symposium. I hope that the former minister remembers that decision. And that crime symposium was then hosted at the Ministry of Infrastructure conference room. I represented the opposition at that crime symposium. But I remembered at that time, the then Prime Minister didn't find it fit to be there, and somebody else was deputizing. Madam President, you know what it meant? The opposition at the time that I represented was willing to participate in the crime fighting effort. And why was there a crime symposium? What triggered the crime symposium? There was a problem.
There was no crime.
Why would a government have a crime symposium? There was clearly a problem. So it is not to suggest that we have never had problems in crime before, but it was clear that back then there was a problem. But the difference is, instead of going on the streets and politicizing the crime situation, as a responsible opposition, we swallowed our pride and we went and participated. We gave suggestions. We gave support to the government. We gave them support, right? We didn't go and dramatize and politicize crime all over platforms and call people names. We participated, we engaged, and we gave support to the government as an opposition to fight crime. And that is what I am expecting the opposition will do as a responsible opposition. Madam President, I will not yield and succumb to selective hearing. Now, it seems that the opposition has finally started understanding due process. I saw the estimates of expenditure being used to reference things and say what is there and what is not there, and that's how you should do it, and if it's not there, it must be done. Bravo to the opposition. St. Lucians have taught them how to understand and respect process. Finally, 15.2 has allowed them to open their eyes and start paying attention to due process, and I applaud them for that. I applaud them for that. And along those lines, maybe in the next 15 years, they might be able to, have a good chance. But it's good that there's finally consciousness about the due process. Now, I got the impression from the opposition, I can't remember which one, I think it may have been Senator Charles, my good friend, who made a point about a health policy that was left by her government upon departure from office. Health insurance policy. Madam President, I would like to ask the opposition, because I know the Minister for Health, I see him every Monday at least. I know the Minister for National Security, I also see him at least once a week. And they are yet to find that health, or whatever it is, that policy that was left. So I ask the opposition to please make that policy.
She has it, she said.
Oh, she has it. Is it the same way, the same place? There was a document that nobody could find that everybody was asking for. Was it? Was it the report on St. Jude, the audit? Is it in the same? The linguist, I don't know. The Shanta King report? Is it in the same? Is it in the same safe that the Shanta King report was? Because I haven't seen it. And if that policy is so great, we have been in government almost 2 years and nobody can find it. So I really need my good friend to make that policy available to us. Now, I don't want to make any accusations, but I listened and I was beginning to wonder when they try to go down that police thing, whether the opposition is attacking the police. Because some of the things I'm hearing about police officers sending out photographs of people to, I'm not going to stand up here and say police officers are saints, but is there any merit in us coming here and attacking the police? The police, I think, has enough on their plate right now. They have enough to deal with right now. I don't know. I need to be told whether that was an attack or whatever it was. But as I said, I was very careful. I did not accuse anyone of attacking the police.
No, police officers, right?
We have a few here. We have to be very careful. The police they are human beings. They have families. They have brothers and sisters and mothers too. They are emotional people, whether they are male or female. They are people, and when we try to politicize what's going on with them, we have to be very careful that we are not attacking them. So let's be very careful in trying to play the heroes for the female police or the heroes for the police today. And I could go down that road, but not here. That's not a good place for this. That we are not in the process further demoralizing them or further hurting the already stressed issues that they have to deal with. So let's be very careful with that. And finally, Madam President, as I said, when some sanity came back to the debate, I think I hope I can be heard in silence for a little bit. I appreciate Madam President, the debate is very spicy. It has some, and that's good. Madam President, Senator Lee made a very interesting contribution, and in his own way, he tends to have his own position and stand very firm on them. And I think it's good for the balance of our debate. He did make the point of the consumer-based collection of VAT as one he would recommend. But I want to say to the Senate that we can agree that the most efficient consumer-type collection of VAT, the consumer-type collection of tax is through VAT, the VAT. And that is why the Labour Party government bit the bullet, paid the price, but implemented the VAT when we did in the previous Kenny Anthony administration. We recognize that it was the most efficient way. It's a consumption tax. The UWP prepared all the infrastructure. They did everything, but they did not have the courage to implement it. We did. The UWP took it. They made a whole thing with it. But we took the decision. We paid the price, and we implemented, as was explained by my colleague, a recommendation that had merit, that was well researched, 15% VAT. We implemented it, collecting over $52 million in revenue. But you know what happened? The very imaginative and creative, was that word was used? Creative and imaginative leader came in and interfered. Very first decision, interfered against the advice of the technical people, interfered with that, removed 2.5%, and from then on, Balfini. But Madam President, I want to remind the leader of government business with all his St. Kitts Nevis model, like he was told, that it is no wonder they had 17.5%. There must be something they know about VAT that we don't know. So, to wrap up, Madam President, There were a couple of questions that were posed. The social programs that the independent senator spoke about. So in essence, I'm agreeing with the independent senator that VAT is a very efficient way of collecting consumption tax. But we had a 15%, things were going okay, it wasn't broken, but somebody wanted to fix it. So they took 2%, 2.5 off it, took back. From that point, you know what happened. But I agree that the independent senator was correct about the 15% under VAT. So, social programs, I'm in agreement with that. As a former school teacher, we understand, and a sportsman, maybe the leader of government business can claim to some extent that, he's a sportsman, or he was. Yeah, maybe. But as a former, I don't often get to compliment you, Madam President, so I won't miss out on opportunity. I will say to him and to the Senate that the social programs are well placed. And this government, I listened to the Minister for Youth Development and Sports two sittings ago, outline a list of sports and social programs that are targeted at school-age students that are ongoing and that are to be implemented under his Ministry of Youth Development and Sports in collaboration with the Ministry of Education. So we understand and we accept the social programs. I think they will nip the problems in the bud. They will engage the young people before they become idle and create problems, social deviance, social problems and deviance. So I agree. Now, as far as the work, the independent senator asked me a question about an update on the work at St. Jude Hospital. I will answer that in a very simple statement. Yes, the outside is clean. That was the first step to make sure that the site is secured. Secondly, I will assure the independent senator that as we speak, work continues at the St. Jude Hospital. I can say that much to him. Contrary to what was apparently the new propaganda machinery now is pushing, that contractors fired or something like that. Madam President, I want to assure the Senate and my independent senator that as I speak, work continues at the St. Jude Hospital site right now. So the Prime Minister will be making further pronouncements on the progress of the works. More specific progress reports will be given, but I am right now assuring the Senate that as I speak, work continues. So, Madam President, I thank members, dramatic, non-dramatic or otherwise, for their presentations and their contributions. This morning when I saw all this yellow and all this color, I said, boy, today we're going to have a very interesting day, and we did. We are in the carnival season, so it's okay to be light, have a little light, spirited approach to things and smile. But I think the discussion today allowed us opportunities to reflect on what we have done and what we are about to do. But I ask that we continue to give support to the very important steps that the government is taking, and hopefully the revenue that we collect from this particular intervention will assist in giving the government the tools, the resources to finance initiatives for national security and for healthcare. I thank my colleagues again, Madam President, and I look forward to the benefits of this piece of legislation. Thank you.
Senators, the question is that the Health and Citizen Security Levy Bill be read a second time. I now put the question. As many are of that opinion, say aye. Aye. As many as are of the contrary opinion, say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
An act to provide for the imposition, payment, and collection of a health and citizen security levy and for related matters.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, as again this bill is a money bill, and I believe we would need not to proceed with the committee stage. So I move that the bill be read a third time and passed.
Senators, the question is that the Health and Security Bill be read a third time and passed. I now put the question. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as are the contrary opinion say no. No. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. I think the ayes have it.
Be it enacted by the King's Most Excellent Majesty, by and with the advice and consent of the House of Assembly and the Senate of St. Lucia, and by the authority of the same as follows. This Act may be cited as the Health and Citizen Security Levy Act 2023.
Honorable Leader of Government Business.
Madam President, I move that the Senate stands adjourned, sine die.
Senators, the question is that this House to stand adjourned on sine die. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. As many as of the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Sitting adjourned.
All right.
Well, we have come to the end of the Senate sitting for today. Nous movons au bout de session Senate là aujourd'hui. C'était une session qui était très intéressante. Enfin, non, c'est pas souvent l'occasion Senate là qui aller autant en taille, parce que c'était une motion pour le gouvernement tirer taxes, ça c'est ça il va que le VAT à surprise des marchandises, particulièrement marchandises pour bâtikaille avec bagaille comme ça, et aussi pour aider femmes qui, vous savez que il y a certains bagailles femmes besoin, avec aussi la tenue pour les affaires énergie pour conserver courant électrique avec bagaille comme ça, particulièrement en temps changement climatique, ça veut pas en anglais climate change. Avec aussi, à part de ça, ça qui était pour la discussion, c'était ça que le Premier ministre a annoncé et qui était discuté en cas concept en mardi, ces affaires taxes, 2,5% taxes sur différents services et marchandises. À pas dit manger avec remède qui le gouvernement a implémenté en AO, commencé en AO, c'est deuxième jour en AO, pour dès l'année, et qui a eu un premier jour AO l'année 2025. Ça a été pour chaque discussion, à surtout les deux façades là, avec it était très intéressant.
Yes, it was absolutely a lively debate, very animated debate, the afternoon session. Most of the discussion, of course, centered around the health and security levy, where the government is seeking a 2.5% increase on certain goods to finance its health and its security policy. Members opposite opposed it, saying it wasn't a good time to implement the taxes. But the leader of government business, that's the MP. Well, he's not the MP. He's the parliamentary secretary in the Ministry of Tourism. He outlined the Prime Minister's statements in the meeting of the Lower House on Tuesday, when he said that this levy would not be on zero-rated VAT items like food, like gasoline, and all the products that were exempted from VAT. And so the discussion the leader of government business, he also took time to explain what that levy would go towards. And he spoke about providing additional resources for the police. They talk about the renovation of police stations, providing the police with body cams, with bulletproof vests and the like. They spoke about even improving the conditions at the Bordelais facility, opening the farms to encourage the rehabilitation of the inmates. And so he stated the government's case for putting just a 2.5% levy on certain select items to push forward with the policy agenda of increasing or improving the health conditions of the country. Especially, he spoke about the government's incremental approach to universal health care, and of course strengthening the security. Even as we speak, the debate is still overflowing, if you will, on the floor. And the morning session, of course, as you rightly mentioned, Michael, there was the value-added tax debate, and of course this has been given a lot of expression, that commencing on August 2nd, 2023, the removal of VAT, the 12.5% VAT, on some groups of commodities, including building materials, commodities relating to the harnessing of solar energy, feminine products, and also the importation of vehicles, relating to the continuation of construction works at the St. Jude's Hospital.
Oui, oui, on va acheter des détails qui m'a été fait, mais nous allons continuer à cette station de télévision MTM, mais plus au rapport, plus nouvelles à ce qui s'est passé, plus de détails à ce qui s'est passé ici. Quand on va parler là, c'est sénateur avec, ça c'est particulièrement sénateur Nancy Charles qui a engagé les autres sénateurs en face à l'opposition, au gouvernement. Ils ont fait ça d'une manière qui est tellement cordiale, mais ils ont tiré à ce façade, mais il est intéressant ça qu'a là. Mais ça c'est le mini pour venir au bout de cette session aujourd'hui. Nous avons merci un peu pour rester venu. Merci Virgil pour la participation avec le rapport à nous travail là. Avec un nom c'est technicien. Nini Vibert Rameau et puis Josiah Alexander qui est technicien nous représente, avec ce technicien qui était là avant, qui est parti. Donc à merci un peu. Avec aussi un nom, ça c'est staff GIS qui a travaillé, même si on n'a pas ici, un nom, tout ce monde qui a travaillé. Donc à merci un peu avec nous avons vu maintenant pour station télévision MTN.